here, and then we'll get going. Could I have a motion for the agenda?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So we're continuing the June sets of minutes, but the April 8th set of minutes was distributed previously. Does anybody have questions or comments or changes? Yeah, moved approval. John seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, those are taken care of. Now we have several matters that are not ones for public hearings. I think those of you who've been with us here before are aware, and I'll just ask among my colleagues here, are there any of these?
I have one.
Okay, which one?
8374.
8374, that recuses. Okay, anybody else? Okay, and that is recused from that one. We'll hold that to the last. Are there any of these people like to discuss? No, you want to? Yes. Yes, please.
Motion to approve 8362, 83, that's 111 Washington Street, 8369.
We're holding that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, continue.
So
Start again.
start with 8369.
Make a motion to approve 8369 for One Square Relief Trust. 8370, 28 India Street, 8371, Richmond Group, Old Plain, and regular that. 8372, 68 Farm Road, 8373, 37 Pojek, 8374.
We're going to hold for a minute. So 8375.
8375, 52 Madison, and 8376, 35 New Nantucket.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you, Nat. Any discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Right.
Within the 48 hours.
Okay, thanks for explaining that.
So make
Somebody like to move that?
make a motion to reaffirm the positive vote.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The next two, 6 Equator Drive and Dean and Melissa Long at 11 Pippin's Way, are both approval after there's been a revision of the site plan. Holly, do you want to tell us anything particular about that, or I think everybody's reviewed it?
Receive a updated site plan for one of them, Pippin's Way, which is up on your screen, so that one is fine. The other ones are pretty self-explanatory as far as 6 Equator.
We had a lot in the packet about that one, I think.
Yeah. Bear with me for a second, I apologize. So this one, we just need a revised plan for the proposed driveway material and required apron.
Okay. Is there a motion for those two? Nat's
Make that motion.
nodding. Is a second?
Positive.
Second.
John seconded. Any discussion?
I just had a quick question. Because that particular piece also fronts,
This is Equator Drive?
yeah,
Okay.
on Bartlett Road, right?
Yes.
So it almost has
This is one
two
lot in.
fronts. Right, it's one lot.
Oh,
and they're putting
okay.
the garage apartment, I believe, in the rear.
Right, if you look at this.
Yeah, right here.
Right.
So what I wanted to ask about was one about hedging, view
Screening.
blocking, screening. There you go. There's the word. Sorry. along Bartlett Road, just with some taller native, or things that will, get a little bit taller for, because most of the views on Bartlett Road are going to be of house fronts.
So it's for privacy primarily, is that what you're saying?
It's existing right here.
Yeah, but I think much of that will come out when they go to put in the garage apartment, or the garage and the garage apartment. The other question I had was,
Just before you leave that one, are you suggesting that something be done differently?
well, I'm not sure whether we can or not,
Okay,
but
I
I
was
think
gonna
it's
say
something to
next.
be
Okay,
considered.
let's hold on that one
them.
and just ask Holly, do you have any comments, or Leslie?
So there's a planning board subdivision decision for this subdivision, and it does require that there are no driveway accesses out onto Bartlett Road. That is something that the planning board has enforced from time to time when necessary, but there's no screening requirement. And that's
Okay.
really beyond the scope of what you're looking at for your second dwelling approval.
So then, the other question I had was, it's a garage apartment with what appears to be a full basement, with window wells to the basement and egress, in other words. And I'm wondering, is this a future tertiary, or? You see what I mean?
So you're saying there's a potential of that, and should that be somehow referenced, Leslie?
So, that's really speculative. I mean, we only have what's on the permit application. They would only be able to apply for a building permit for whatever the planning board authorizes as a second dwelling.
Right.
So if they wanted it to be a tertiary, they would have to apply for that separately. Or it would be an enforcement matter.
Okay.
So that's,
later date.
having raised that, that's going to be probably in the notes here in case somebody wanted to come back and look at that. Okay, thank you. Anything else on either 6 Equator or 11 Pippin's Way? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
John moved and Nat seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have to skip the next one because there's a public hearing, and then let's go to 6 South Myacomet Avenue. Any questions about that? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve 6 South Myacomet Ave.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Second by Nat. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, down to 34 Chuck Hollow Road. That's one we've looked at before. This is a revised site plan, right, Holly?
No, this is a new one.
Yes.
Oh, you're asking them for a revised site plan. Okay. Any discussion, questions about that? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 34 Chuck Hollow.
Yep. Second.
Okay, discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then the next one is to be continued. So now we're down to tertiaries. 14 Celtic Drive. Holly, anything you want to tell us about that?
No, recommend approval.
Okay. Discussion. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then the next one is a hearing. Final one here is Isaiah Athletic Club number 25-15. This is an escrow release.
We're continuing that
Continue
one.
to,
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so now we're ready for public hearings. And I believe we have, first one coming up is 5 Cudweed Road. Ms. Alger.
Good evening, Sarah Alger for the applicant, and both Mr. and Mrs. Millard are here to answer any questions as well.
I think I'd first say thank you for, it's clear that you did a lot of careful work, both the owners and you, to put this all together. We appreciate that.
I have to say the owners did the bulk of it, so.
Okay.
And I understand.
Thank you.
I understand that Mr. Trudell has done his reading and
That's
signed
correct.
it.
Oh,
yes, thank you very much.
Okay,
Just
thank
about to
you.
say that. Correct.
So for those who, Dave, I don't know if you've seen one of these before. It's called Mullining In, and if you missed the first hearing, you can watch it on video and eat popcorn at the same time and read all the paperwork, and then you
Can't
can
miss two.
volunteer to vote on it. And this is one that is a permit, so I'm thinking, Campbell, it's your turn. I think that my recollection, the last one was Stephen, I can't remember where we left off, but whoever has had the least recent experience, I'm thinking that was your turn, Campbell, to vote.
Always for Lisa.
Okay. Sarah, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have a little presentation that I'll just go through quickly. I think, as you probably recognize, the applicants heard the concerns that you raised at the last meeting and tried to do what they could to address all of them. So the substantial changes that they've made to address the concerns that the board has include the elimination of all patio areas. So all the patio areas have been eliminated. That's reduced the impervious surface by nearly 1,000 square feet. They moved the pool, as was suggested at the hearing, into the front yard on the north side of the house. It's now sited the greatest distance from the land bank properties to the east and south, creating a larger area for screening. They changed the orientation of the pool. It's been rotated 90 degrees so that it's no longer running kind of parallel with the land bank property. It's instead perpendicular to it. Again, providing more opportunity for screening and additional planting. And then you'll see the site plan has been revised to show all of that, with the pool now completely in existing lawn area, rotated the 90 degrees, and in the front yard. The project has also been reduced in scale, so it's now only a pool. We are using less area to accommodate the front yard location. We've reduced the water sheet from 18 by 36, which is 648 square feet, to 17 by 38. 646 square feet, with the total pool area reduced from 880 square feet to 760. A breakdown of the impervious surfaces. Existing, we have 4,293, which is a total of 5.37%. The pool is 760. The pool equipment is 12 square feet. So the total proposed now is 772 square feet, or less than 1%, 0.96%, for a total of 5,065 square feet, or 6.33%. To compare that, just because I think sometimes a comparison is helpful, to the project next door will be, it's about 2,242 square feet, or 30.68% smaller than that property immediately to the west at 6 Walbang. That was approved in March 2018. And in this particular case, we're not proposing any increase in ground cover. And then, yeah. So what the applicants did was mark out the area for the pool with this red tape in their yard. And the pictures, I think, give you a sense. I think there's this one.
Sorry.
It's totally within the existing irrigated lawn area, and this shows where that will be happening. So all the moor type vegetation and other plantings will be preserved and won't change in any way as a result of the project. We're only going to work within the existing irrigated front lawn. And we have some pictures of that. The pool and coping are flush in the lawn, with coping only on 3 sides to cover the thickness of the pool. The pool safety cover is tucked in the pool coping on the 4th side, the 17-foot side of the pool. This is a picture, obviously, not of this actual pool, but of how we propose that it will look. It's just a picture taken from the internet. Screening. So the existing lawn surrounding the pool will allow for additional screening, environmentally sensitive and consistent with moors and land bank properties. The new plantings will address any needed screening from all adjacent properties. This screening plan is a little deceptive in that that's the wrong pool. So don't pay too much attention to where the pool is on that particular screening piece. So we're going to have native plants configured to match natural features of the adjoining property. We'll fully screen the pool from all adjacent properties and all roads and public ways. And that's what some of the screening would look like. For water treatment, we're going to use the most modern, advanced, state-of-the-art ozone O3 oxygen technology with UV buffer. We're not going to use salt. All the water will be dechlorinated before the annual minimal drainage, which will be about 3%. People don't, as you probably have learned over time, people don't drain pools anymore the way they used to completely empty them out. They lower the level at the end of the season and then fill it at the beginning of the next season. We'll stop all water treatment at least 3 weeks prior to drainage. That's what the Conservation Commission requires. We're not currently required to have conservation approval, but we're going to meet their standard. And there'll be no treatment of the pool between November 1st and May 1st. We've worked with all our neighbors. I think you have gotten letters of support from several of our neighbors. 2 of them already have pools, and I think we've worked pretty hard to minimize the impact on them. And that's an overview of the neighborhood. Although, of course, it doesn't show the new pool right next door on Wallbank.
Because of the age of the
And what else can I tell you? So I guess just a summary. It's only the pool. The entire project is significantly reduced in size from what you saw at the last hearing. No patio, no fire pit, no spa, hot tub, just a quiet family pool area. We've moved it to the north side to maximize the distance from the land bank. We'll fully screen it, and we'll preserve the existing vegetation.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your consideration.
Are there questions for Ms. Alger? Dave?
Just, I'm just concerned, I mean, 3%, how many gallons of water is that will be being discharged into?
I thought they were getting the truck.
Are they gonna get a truck or what?
We're not really proposing a truck because we're not going to be discharging in any area that's under either NHESP or Conservation Commission jurisdiction. And we'd be discharging on site in our own property. So we're not anticipating a huge problem with the water discharge.
The treatment system reduces the chlorine because it dissipates in the 3 weeks prior to discharge.
Correct. That's correct. And we will also have that ozone treatment as well. So it will be minimal to begin with, but then without having any treatment at least 3 weeks prior to discharge, it should all be dissipated by then.
Other questions? This is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen. If anybody would like to speak on this matter, please come forward, Ms. Moulton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. I just wanted to take a moment to thank the board and the applicants for taking the concerns into consideration from the last hearing. This definitely has really improved the siting of the pool and the conditions substantially. Given the location of this lot being completely surrounded by the moorlands, I do still think that it's an inappropriate lot for a pool. But with that said, I absolutely appreciate the efforts that were made to revise this plan. And so then if the board moves forward with the permit, I just wanted to make a couple of additional comments. I think it's important to note that the applicant and with the board's guidance have really taken into account the performance standards under the bylaw for Moorlands Management District under Section D. And I think it would be appropriate to, not being that familiar with how the permits are written, but to somehow include note of that in the permit, and that one of the reasons that the permit is being issued is because of the siting and location and the consideration of those specific performance standards. And then also as far as the screening, that I know is being proposed with native plantings, I would just suggest that if the applicant's interested in working with the land bank on those plantings, I'm sure they would probably be really interested in contributing thoughts on species, given that they do a lot of work to maintain and manage the habitat surrounding the property. So I just would invite them to reach out to the land bank for some assistance on that in the future if it's appropriate, because I'm sure the land bank would appreciate commenting on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Anybody to Ms. Bolton? Any other member of the public wish to speak? Are we ready to close the public hearing?
I think
Nat,
so.
what do you think?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I think so. I mean, we still probably have a conversation, but I think we can close the public hearing. So I'll make that motion. Close.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Campbell says aye.
I
Okay.
did.
Any opposed? Okay. So what's your pleasure? I hope we could consider adding something along the lines of what Ms. Walton said as an additional finding in the permit, saying that, just so we will
Yeah,
remember
no,
in
I
the
think that's
future.
good. Can we do that,
uh,
Leslie? Can we put that language, even though that's not like
to say
binding
that
language,
it's
it's
approved
important.
because it's approved in light of careful review of the performance standards, the siting and the location, and that it's not generally applicable precedent for any future matter. Is that,
Yeah, we can put
Okay.
that in the basis of the findings
Okay.
section of the decision.
that would be
Okay,
great.
great.
So you
So I'll
want
make the motion to approve with that language and the changes made by the applicant. Our suggestions,
to, in the conditions,
conditions that we have in the staff report.
and is this one of those that I think we have to make some finding that
Oh,
this is the compatibility of,
okay.
is that
So do we
right?
need to have that language in the motion to
You do. You have to find that
Okay.
it's in harmony with the general
harmony?
purpose
I
and
forgot
intent
the
of the
word
bylaw.
harmony today.
And
Okay,
it's not substantially more detrimental to the
Right.
neighborhood. Okay.
thank you. That's my motion.
Good, and maybe in future, could we ask
harmony
for
motion.
Holly to put that language in whenever we need to do that as
Absolutely.
part of the
Can you do
list?
that, Holly?
It's
Just so
actually
we
in
don't
there.
forget.
Is it?
Yeah,
The
it's-
last paragraph.
It's in the later
No.
paragraph, but it'd be
Okay.
helpful to have it as one of the numbered
here.
items
Thank you.
But I can do that for continued ones.
for future ones. Okay, and who would like to second Nat's motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Further discussion?
I just have the drainage of the pool, given that we don't know exactly the volume of the 3%, and it won't be being trucked away, I would just like to advise that it be on some type of a slow release.
So it can be
Like,
absorbed.
because otherwise, you get a hose and you just sort of, where is it going? The idea is if it goes quickly out of the pool, it's going to run
Further.
potentially into properties that aren't theirs or are under management. So I just sort of wanted to bring that up as a piece of discussion in terms of the rate of flow when you get rid of the water, that 3%. Do you see what I'm saying? Like if it goes slowly, it's going to absorb straight into their land. And if it goes really quickly, it could easily just flush downhill, water taking the path of least resistance and all.
Right, so two thoughts on that. One, the conditions that you include need to be conditions that we can enforce.
Okay.
So I don't know how someone would go out and enforce that unless they just happen to catch them while they're draining the pool. Secondly, we don't have any regulations related to swimming pools outside of zoning right now, but I think the Board of Health is working on something, or their staff is working on something. So I think, maybe the best approach would be to leave that with the new regulation whenever that comes out, instead of trying to put something in a planning board decision that's difficult.
Well, it's more of
to
just a
enforce.
suggestion. And then for us to be thinking about it.
That's
more
helpful.
clearly.
I think that the Millards are using state-of-the-art approaches here, so I think if you heard that question, I'm sure you don't want to have slimy pool water flooding your basement or anything else, so you may just want to bear that in mind in the interim, and I hope we'll have a chance to come back to that when we hear from the Board of Health. Okay?
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Okay. No opposition, unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you again to both the Millards and to Ms. Walton for those suggestions you made, and I hope the land bank would provide you with advice on plantings if you would find that helpful. Okay, sounds good. All right,
Yes.
yeah, we closed the public hearing.
Yep.
So we're about to open the next public hearing. This is Ms. Alger's night to shine here. Next item is 40-19, the Roberts Collection, 4 Chester Street, 11 India Street, 29 and 31 Center Street. Holly said that there's been some submission by an attorney for not the applicant, but someone else that we haven't had a chance to see, so we're going to need to review that. That may mean we need to continue, I'm not sure, but Ms. Elger.
I have it.
Okay. Thank you for the added work everybody did to work on this in the meantime also.
Thank you.
So take it away.
Okay, so since the last hearing, I guess I should say I'm Sarah Alger for the applicant. With me is Don Bracken, our project engineer, Terry Sanford, and Jason Brown, and Tyler Hardy, who are principals in the project. I think that's everybody. Since the last hearing in June, we did submit the full set of plans, drainage, everything went to Ed Pesci. He responded over the weekend, sending a letter. I think we've addressed all of his concerns. He noted only that as a condition of approval, we should be required to remove the fire alarm boxes, which we are happy to do, prepared to do that in any case. Those are no longer operational. And those were comments that came from the fire department. We also submitted I think, fairly comprehensive proposed operations and management proposal that would have particular conditions in it that the board could impose if they wanted to as part of this approval. Obviously, we would, just to run through it, we'd operate fully in compliance with our approval and with the zoning bylaw at all times. The total number of hotel units on the site will have actually decreased 1 from the 62 currently allowed to 61, while the number of hotel rooms would have increased by 1 from 65 to 66. The 3 existing retail stores in the meeting house would be eliminated. We are retaining the 1 retail store currently in the basement of Manor House. Holly, could you scroll up just a little bit for me? Thanks. Okay. On the restaurant, we're going to have the 2 commercial kitchens. It's actually, in our mind, it's 1 kitchen, but they call it 2 because it's on 2 different levels. We're going to increase that restaurant seating by about 24 seats. So we'd have 80 interior seats and 60 exterior seats. We've reduced the number of proposed exterior seats by eliminating the patio area that was a concern to the neighbor, in fact, the neighbor that's written in the letter. So all the exterior seating would be in the area that's encompassed between the buildings and not behind the building and over sort of closer to proprietors and where it might impact craft masters. And we did go around, and I have to say I pulled a whole bunch, and I won't bore you with this unless you want to be bored by it, but we pulled a lot of seating occupancy levels around town, and I think the one that's probably closest to our proposal is the Jared Coffin House the tap room, which was just recently approved. Just as a reminder to the board, that the tap room, which is exclusive of Prime, has 61 seats interior, 119 seats outside, for a total of 180 seats in its approval. And I think that's a pretty comparable situation to us, an existing hotel, which is the same as us, existing restaurant, same situation here. Actually, their restaurant had been shut down, the tap room had been shut down for quite a number of years and probably abandoned from a permitting point of view. Same situation with hotel guests needing to be kind of sensitive to what's happening with the hotel guests, keeping things quiet, not having any sort of use on the patio that would either upset surrounding residential neighbors or existing hotel guests. So we have one residential kitchen. It's currently in the Robert House. That would remain, and then we're going to keep the existing manager's apartments. There's one in the basement of Robert's house and one located in the basement of Manor House. Our maximum peak shift employees would be 49. We've given a breakdown. It's one innkeeper, one assistant innkeeper, 12 house hosts that handle cleaning, maintenance, guest services, 3 bar backs, 3 bartenders, 8 servers, 6 back waiters, 2 hostesses, 1 manager, 1 assistant manager, 1 chef, 6 cooks, 3 dishwashers, and 1 expediter/manager. We'd have 1 employee of the hotel on site at all times who is responsible for hotel operations. That person would have a cell phone. I don't know why pager's in there. Does anyone even use a pager anymore? Probably dating
Doctors.
myself.
Quite a while ago now.
Pager reference. But anyway, with a cell phone, that we'd make that number available 24 hours a day. It would be on file with the building department, with the planning board, and at the police department, as well as at the site. So if there was ever any issue, there'd be someone to call 24 hours a day. We keep an open log of complaints, of any action, and then of any action that we took to address or abate any of the complaints. All of the exterior lighting would be compliant with the zoning bylaw in Chapter 102 of the Town Code, generally directed downward so as not to be intrusive to any neighboring property. Let's see, we're going to obviously keep it clean. We're going to have the refuse picked up and dropped off at least once daily. The glass, we're not going to recycle our glass and bottles at night. We would do that not between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. I know that was a
The
concern.
lady, yeah, and that's true.
It is true.
It's
I mean,
amazing.
you take a thing
I heard
of
it the other
bottles
day.
and
I couldn't believe how loud it was.
it's loud.
It's like almost like a leaf blower.
I think it could be louder than a leaf blower, Nat.
Definitely.
But anyway, we're very sensitive to that for our hotel guests, if not for our neighbors as well. So we'll do,
It's true.
we're going to have minimal changes to the existing hotel and restaurant delivery and garbage processes, which I think have been running fairly smoothly. Everything will come in and out from Chestnut Street, where the service entrance is. Linens, trash, recyclables, and food deliveries brought in by hand truck. And then brought in through the rear behind Gatehouse to the new back staircase at the Meeting House. We're going to screen everything from view. The kitchen equipment, we're going to vent so as to minimize odor or noise to adjacent properties. We're going to clean and properly maintain our venting system. We're agreeing to have no exterior television sets within the outdoor restaurant and bar patio area. We're going to have no motor vehicles on the hotel grounds. We're going to keep that area open for the deliveries, that one kind of bricked area.
Yeah.
We're going to have print material like the other guest houses that discourages people from bringing cars to the island. Try to emphasize the use of bikes, taxis, NERDA. We'll be giving NERDA passes to all of the employees. Again, 140 seats total, 80 interior, 60 exterior, again, located in that kind of U shape that's formed by the buildings when you look at the site plan, so that the buildings are really performing a lot of the screening function. A little bit more, Holly. Oh, let's see. So hours of operation generally, we'd have interior 7 a.m. to 1 a.m., breakfast from 7 to 10, lunch from 11:30 to 2, and dinner from 5:30 to 12, with the bar closing at 1. And for the exterior seating, we'd like to propose 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., with breakfast from 7 to 10, lunch from 11:30 to 2, and dinner from 5:30 to 11, with all the people being off the patio. Let's see, pickup and drop off is on Center Street. We have no outdoor live amplified music at any time. No outdoor music at all between 7 a.m. or 10 or after 10 p.m. We're going to keep all the doors and windows in the hotel closed, except as required to provide natural ventilation. No loud music, no violation of Chapter 101 of the Town Code. And that's really our proposal.
First, a procedural point. John is mulling in on this one.
Yeah.
He had read everything, seen anything, ate the popcorn, had the Kool-Aid. It's all ready to go. And I'd ask Stephen if you would join us. So let's see if there are questions from the board. Then we'll open the public hearing for any public comments. You want to start?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. Hi, Sarah. Good evening. The recycle bins are located off Chestnut Street, indoors or outdoors?
Outdoors.
Okay. And then the only other thing I would say with respect to comments is I greatly appreciate the fact that noise will be self-policed due to the fact that this has hotel housing aspects to it. If it weren't for that, I would want to be much more strict on the noise controls. I think as a general tenor going forward, that would be my position. Noise is somebody else's music, is someone else's noise, and it can be terribly upsetting. And the jingling of recyclables definitely isn't anyone's music. But I do appreciate the changes that the applicants have made and that have been included in the management plan. I think they're very helpful. And again, I think with the self-policing of having guests on site sleeping is what makes the difference, at least for me. So thank you.
John?
Can I add one thing?
Oh,
I
yes.
forgot to mention that the plans have been approved by the Historic
We saw
District
that.
Commission.
Thank you.
Just a couple of notes, something about lighting, I'm sure will be directed through HTC, low lights, and hours of operation, obviously. Bike racks, have they discussed maybe where, how many?
We have bike racks on the plan. I think,
Could you give us your name for the record?
Yeah, sorry, this is Terry Sanford as the applicant. There are 3 bike racks on site. Our intent, we'll probably replace them because they're not in great shape, but to maintain them. One is to the rear of the Meeting House building, right, sort of where the mouse is, yep, which is essentially for employees. And then there's another one at the front of the Roberts building, in front of India Street, sort of where it jogs next to Proprietors. It's not shown, but it's right in there, in that open space. And then there's a third all the way up top in the jog where the Manor House sort of connects to the loading area. There's a third right there. So our intent would be essentially to maintain those 3 bike racks, and again, we'll replace and upgrade them, but.
And I just want maybe to think about more consideration for added bike racks, just with the size of the expansion of not only the patrons but also the employees. As you just stated, how many there are, plus the hotel guests with bikes. So if there could be a place that you can increase maybe more bike racks, that would be appreciated. And also just the idea of satellite parking. It's come up in a few establishments here. I don't know if there has been consideration to
And it's, maybe something that we should talk about further in the future with other applications. But something that, in a smaller scale with Cisco Breweries did. They realized where their site was, they didn't have the required parking. In order to expand the business, they bought satellite parking, and it was just down the street. I know there's a considerable expense to that, but something, if we find out that, if we find in the future that, it becomes even more of an issue with the crowding and the parking, if that's some kind of consideration that you would think about later on.
I'll tell you the one thing that we haven't committed to, but are certainly considering, is not necessarily satellite parking, but doing courtesy vehicles, where the hotel has 1 or 2 cars that service the guests, again, to eliminate the need for excess rentals and stuff like that.
Thank you.
You were talking about the ventilator.
Oh, yes, thank you. And just with the kitchens now, the location of the venting system, I know the Graydon House had a very expansive and expensive, unfortunately, system. If that has been, the latest and greatest added into your plan to not only strategically place it now that you're in the downtown district there, and the size of the restaurant that system is going to need to be to accommodate the food. If that has been something that you'd share with us. We haven't developed the full venting system yet. Emeritus is doing the work for us in terms of architecture, and they'll contract with a contractor to design the actual system. The kitchen, the 2 kitchens, it's really just a connected above and below kitchen, are in the rear of the meeting house, exactly where the kitchen is today, actually pulled forward. So I would imagine the venting system will run above that. And again, we'll, go to great lengths to be minimally impactful to the neighbors. Yeah.
But and we're tied into, proprietors got their kitchen right back there. And so we're sort of in the zone where it's working.
Yep.
Yeah. Just from filtering, there are neighbors on the second floor, and strategically placed, you can have mushroom units off the side of the building instead of up. And I would just, I'm sure the HCC would have something to say about it also, but have strong considerations for the neighbors on the second floor, that they're not, thinking, today's prime rib night. I have it in my front door.
Yeah, no, we'll go to great lengths to be mindful with that. And again, as we mentioned, like we're mindful inherently just because of even the hotel guests. So we need to be protective that their residents as close as a few feet away from the restaurant. So
I think that's it.
Yeah. I got a few things, Terry and Sarah. I like this idea about that Chestnut Street delivery area. Scott, I know you're back there. I have to ask you, can dollies go back there? I mean, I walk back there all the time, but I never actually thought about a dolly. Can a dolly deliver from back there to get to the other side of the property? Because that's a great idea if it can do that.
Yeah, so you can
The
run
little-
a dolly either through
The little thing there in the back. with
Yeah,
the
exactly. So there's a stairwell there that accesses the basement, the garage egress.
Yeah.
But
But you can go around that.
You can go around it. We're also working to see if we can work out a system to either cover that or ramp it, so you can really run smoothly right through.
Yes, because
So that's
the-
that's
the
the
loading
ideal
zone
sort of
issue
design.
by that building is horrible.
Yeah.
I took Rob McNeil for finally, after 2 years, him being here, I took a little 6 a.m. walk the other Sunday, and that was one of our spots.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember this, but they used to park on the sidewalk at 36 Center Street. That was the actual loading zone. You get the whole truck on the sidewalk. So I have a couple of thoughts on the coordinated review process that's going to eventually happen here. I know it's not in our purview for every little thing, but you see Bob's got his little thing for the fire department. I mean, that's, okay. So I think we should I talked to Rob about this. Hussey Street to India, that little section, that's 2-way. It's ridiculous, okay? Never should have been 2-way anyway. My suggestion would be in the winter when you start working here, September 15th or whatever the date's going to be, is that working with the town, it needs to be 1-way for that piece, either in or out.
Yeah.
Somehow, okay? Because that's a mess there anyway, and if you're people are trying to, I'm imagining, you know, what it's gonna be like, just like Broad Street was, although there were a lot more projects at the same time. This is one project. That mitigating a little bit for the lady across the street that wrote the letter the last time. And also, Chestnut is really wide. Like, you can deliver gas and get by the truck if you pull up on the curb. That's pretty amazing. So there's a lot of space there, and that's why I was really glad you mentioned that your little parking from the previous project, 2000, whenever that was done, 2011. That's good. That's real good. I mean, there's a lot of good that can happen if a Cisco truck can park there and not have to try to figure out where they're going by that tree that's ridiculous there to try to park. The other thing is hoopy bike racks along the front. I don't know how many there are, if there's any there yet. You know how the town and with Wendy Schmidt, there's a program to put those little hoopy bike racks in? Maybe we could put a few hoopies in. Those things are good in the right spot. It's a wide sidewalk.
Absolutely.
Bollards, whatever they call them, the little round thing. So, and that would be, I guess that's it. I mean, I just know that there's, you know, there was a lot of sidewalk repair that got done on Broad Street by all the individual projects, and that would be the stuff that I'd be looking for.
Okay.
So, that's it.
Dave?
No, I think everyone's covered everything. I mean, bike racks, definitely. I mean, I think the bigger, I appreciate you guys listening to Mrs. Masters' concerns and addressing that. I think that,
Yeah.
that's great. I think the bigger concerns are just going to be during construction and how we mitigate the effects on the neighbors. But so far, this looks good.
Campbell and Ladera, if you have any questions, then I have a few. Any from down there?
I just have a couple of questions. For me, the 80 seats outside, are those all, is all the seating in this open to the public? Or is a portion of it just for hotel guests? I don't know who I'm talking to here, but
Sarah,
it's
Sarah,
60 seats
Can-
outside? Okay.
can you,
Your interior.
yeah,
Tyler Hardy, part of Blue Flag. It's open to the public,
yeah.
all of it. will be open to
Okay,
the
so
public.
it'll be hotel guests and the public,
Exactly.
inside and outside?
Exactly. It would be.
Okay.
It could be open to anyone. Would like the ability. It was in the note Sarah had that we might try to deliver some food to some of the rooms at some point, but that's probably a secondary piece of this.
So my thought, and we probably have no control over this, but it would seem like outdoor in that area that does have, sort of unlike the Jarrett Coffin, it does have a very high residential rate around the properties. And it would just seem like stopping serving food at 10 outdoors would allow people, that extra hour to clear out, and the noise ordinance, I think, is till 10. And I noticed that inside you're serving till midnight, so, people could easily move inside, just as a thought for some of the noise mitigation, which is one of the main complaints we've heard from the people around there. That was my thought, as well as following up on the construction vehicles, but they're a problem everywhere, not just on this site.
Do you want to comment on the hours point?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to mention, because you mentioned the residential component. I mean, there are residences behind the Jared Coffin, but also I didn't point these other examples out. The Brotherhood, which is backed completely by residential, has 152 interior seats and 80 exterior seats for a total of 232 seats.
Well, I know that this used to have 240 interior seats, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so
That's
it wasn't
right.
so much the amount of seating, it just seems like even for the hotel guests to know that noise is going to be shutting down at a certain time is
Right.
helpful. I've stayed in hotels where they've had outdoor eating until 11 or midnight, and it's just the nature of people chatting. It's not necessarily that people are getting rowdy and blah, blah, but they,
So what we've
Chat
proposed
about.
in the operations plan, and this was developed by the hotel operators that we partner with, was an 11 o'clock cutoff. So, look, our preference is to have no constraints from the planning board, but to let those be set internally by the operators of the hotel and based on
Right.
the guests and the actual noise and the experience. So, we asked them to put what we thought was a reasonable late number there. And the reason we prefer to have no constraints, or at least to be able to sort of self-select that, is that we do want to run the restaurant year-round, and being able to maximize in the summer is really important. So from our perspective, we looked at that as like, look, we have a self-interest that is balanced to make sure that this isn't loud and raucous for the neighborhood, because we've got 60 hotel rooms full of guests in season, which is significantly more residential than the immediately adjacent few apartments. So for us, like, to have that balance, to be able to run till 11, and self-select if we close earlier was important. So that's how we got to where we got to. And of course, again, I think your points about this can't be a late night loud scene. I can't appreciate that I can appreciate that more than any probably neighbor, again, because we've got paying hotel guests on a nightly basis that are closer to the restaurant than anybody else. So,
well, right, but my
obviously,
point
we'll
is, like,
observe whatever
if
the
you are,
board
excuse me,
imposes,
but
but-
my point is more that once the kitchen closes, that doesn't mean that the patio clears out. That was more my point, that if
Sure.
you're serving till 11, people are still going to be hanging out until midnight, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that
to-
was more my point, that maybe people are hanging out until 11 and then sort of clearing out. But, however it goes, like I said, I'm not going to be the determiner of any of this. I just think it's a suggestion, since the town does have I believe, a noise ordinance until 10, so.
Lydia? Okay. I had, did you have something else?
I'll wait if you don't bring it
Okay. My first point, I think, ties into the last thing you said, Mr. Sanford. I see the management plan, paragraph 16 says the plan may be modified from time to time by the hotel, provided that any such amendment is in keeping with the spirit and intent of all approvals. I would feel better, and I think, for example, the Westmore Club is a recent example, that we should have some role in overseeing management plan. Nat, maybe you can tell me other examples, but it just seems to me that
West End.
it would be well, that's really a good example, now known as Millie's, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a novel change, and if everything's smooth and super and you are self-enforcing, there won't be a problem, but I would feel better that we have jurisdiction to come back in if there were some sorts of concerns. Nat, would you
Yeah,
have a
Madam
comment?
Chair, can I just add something? Sarah, I mean, you've been at so many meetings. We have been instituting this like 1 year sort of period of time where we automatically have you, not you, but like other projects, on like an agenda of, like I say, a September and October meeting where we look at, like, has been any complaints? Like this thing with the phone number, that came from Millie's, I believe. That was the first place, isn't it, Leslie? I think it was.
Either Millie's or Westmore.
Millie's of Westmore with the phone thing. And that's been good about that. And these are things that we can sort of check on or whatever, and people have a little bit of a say. So, like, when what is the threshold of a minor modification versus a major, Leslie, when we find it as minor to change certain things on MCDs? How does that work?
So you can include in your decision sort of the option to review something without holding a public hearing in the future.
Okay. Okay.
But generally, the better practice is if it's a situation where an abutter or the public may be impacted in some way, you should hold the public hearing. And what you've done, I think, with some of these other applications is that you schedule, a public hearing for, maybe a year after the certificate of occupancy is issued, review
Okay.
how the operations went, and if
Not
they,
from approval, but from opening.
Just re-
from
Right.
opening, and if they want to request that hours be extended, or if the board has heard of complaints about the business and the board wants to retract the hours, then that's the time to discuss that.
Yeah, and a good example too is the Graydon House, Sarah, what you did. And the first one was just telling David, that it was only gonna feed the guests. And that lasted like 10 minutes. And because the business plan is so big, and this is what I see in my world, the risk that you take to this job, these projects is scary. This isn't 1960. This isn't the Bosun's Locker. I mean, this is money. And so there has to be a give and take. But we do have to hold our little control with an MCD in the sense that Judith is saying is right. We can't just say, oh, yeah, well, you can change something. And the other thing is that you have to go to the select board for certain things. There's this cross thing. You have Amy, and, we get brought up at these meetings. Well, the planning board approved this, but we think it should be this. So we like to try to keep it where there's no conflicts. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So-
My only concern, and I don't have a concern about having to come back
Yeah.
for major issues that need adjustment.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to have to come back if, for example, we say we're going to have 3 bar backs and 3 dishwashers.
Yeah, no,
And suddenly we
that's-
have 2 bar backs
Yeah,
and 4
nobody would even know what,
dishwashers, or-
half people don't know what that is.
I was going to say that the operations plan is presented, and maybe I misunderstood this. I wasn't expecting this full thing become codified as part of the MCDS. You asked us to present how we would do this. I figured you guys would pull key pieces out of this that were important to the
Right.
board and hold us to those standards. And to Sarah's point, I have no problem coming back. To your point about a trial, I think that's super reasonable. I'd ask you innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
give us
Right.
enough rope to hang ourselves
Yeah.
as opposed
Yeah.
to constraining
It-
ourselves and then moving forward. But
It's just better for everybody to have it be routine, so it doesn't have to be a big to-do. I know you're proceeding very conscientiously, but it's better for everybody just to have a check-in like that.
Yeah. No issue.
I have a couple more, and then I want to circle back to what the paperwork is and what's in it. I take your point, Ms. Alger, about if you change the closing to be, have lunch till 2:30 instead of 2, I don't know that we need to go back and look at that again. If it were to try to make it later in the evening, I think we would need to look at that
Right.
again. So some of these things are more or less significant, and I'm personally thinking we may need to continue this till next month in order to have a full-blown workup that staff's able to hammer out something with those particulars. But
I would suggest
please.
perhaps doing a draft decision that could be
I
presented to the
think,
board for its.
I think
Yeah.
that would be a great way to go.
Yeah.
But just to
Yeah.
have a complete checklist, a couple of the other things that struck me were the reference about natural ventilation, doors and windows except for natural ventilation. Forgive me, I'm a lawyer. What does that mean? I don't know. If somebody's going
Infiltration,
to,
yeah.
if somebody's going to try to enforce that, what does that mean? If it's a humid day, it's
I think
open.
that was something that was put in another decision, because I carried it forward from another decision.
Well, it may
might have
be
been a Board of
perfect.
Health requirement.
I don't know what it means, and if there were a need to enforce it, I think it's not just airflow, it also has implications for noise, so that's an example of
Right,
something that.
I can pin that one down.
Well, and I think if you work with staff, another question I had was, we ordinarily have set out dates of work, and since this is downtown, I'm sure that'll be something, you're probably
Right.
wanting to get started
We're-
in September,
Well,
is
we're
that right?
anticipating that you would put the usual seasonal restrictions. We'd like to start in September, and I think sometime in June is when you normally have it, but
Right.
with maybe some period of time around Memorial Day when there's a shutdown,
Right.
something like that.
And you're going to have to go to the select board for liquor license, entertainment, all those things. So
Yes.
I had asked staff about that before because I was a little confused about if they go first or if we go first or if they get our report and it says everything's fine, if that means they think that we're saying, give you extra gin and tonic or whatever. I've never seen how they do that, but I think that it'd be good to take this month and try to get some.
They definitely make their own decision. They're not guided by your
Okay.
decision in
If I
that
may.
regard.
Yes, please, John.
Also, I'd like to point out that the town engineer, Ed Pesci, has been given the plans for review, but I don't
Right.
think we've heard back from any kind of suggestions, drainage or things
did.
like that.
I think we've got drainage
just
now,
did.
but I was going to ask Holly, I think you had a report from Ed that I think I don't know if you emailed it, or if you're going to
I
hand it out.
emailed it and
Okay.
I thought I printed it out for you all. You didn't have it in front of you?
I have a copy because you handed it to me, but I don't know if everybody, so that's another thing.
It is
I
right
think.
here. My
But
apologies.
if we're going to hold off for another month, then Dave,
And then if we could, see at least if they have thought, or if someone has a plan on how to mitigate the impact on the neighbors during construction, about parking of trucks.
yeah, that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Trying to
You
come
know,
up
as
with
far as,
something.
yeah, maybe even limiting the amount of work trucks to be on site at a time, and then the hours you're gonna work, you mentioned September. I mean, being in retail, I would suggest October would probably be better, because I think it's really gonna impact everyone around them, and I know that that you guys have shown the willingness to
Right, I think
to
that,
address these
I mean,
issues.
obviously, the downside, and I've learned this by experience, the downside of curtailing the hours is then you don't get the project done.
Yep.
Oh,
And-
I understand.
And so you end
Yeah.
up with
Back
2
around.
years of project construction. It
Yeah.
actually ends up being worse for everone than one really painful year. You end up
But
with 2 really
probably
painful
within a
years.
month, you'd have additional information or have thought about that, so that could be spelled out a little more too.
Yeah. Did you want to?
I had,
Comment. I mean, Sarah started to say it. I mean, the more constraints, the more likely it just stretches. It's like you squeeze the jelly. You know.
well,
Oh, no, I agree.
we
but
have
we need to know.
we weren't asked to bring a construction plan, but
No.
that has started to be developed. We have already started to explore
That's why we're asking
renting
for next
parking
month.
spaces in the immediate vicinity where we can keep work trucks off site. We started to talk about whether we can even, like, how many we can keep on the actual site,
Well,
and
and
organizing
that
accordingly.
amazing, the tree that's there, I mean, don't kill that tree, okay?
We will not kill that tree.
The
The one on
Lorax will
Center.
come and get you, you don't want that. Last thing I wanted to say is I agree with Campbell in terms of the 10 o'clock. If it's really, if we have a noise ordinance, volume of people's voices and that kind of thing affects people too. So I'd ask you to think about whether finish serving at 10. That's just one out of the whole group, but that's another comment on that. Board, want to comment further?
Yeah,
Steve.
through you, Madam Chair. So acknowledging the comments about the construction plan, I'll get on those in a second. I think it is important, our chair brought up some questions and concerns about changing the management plan, and the applicants responded, and I think that that was a good back and forth, and it makes a lot of sense. But also, I think it makes sense to delineate within the draft decision those items that are clearly of importance to the planning board from the management plan that would not be changed without either a minor modification or a structural special permit modification. And then things that are obviously not of such concern, like the number of barbacks, or even items that are de minimis, they may be of concern, could be left in the management plan. And I would suggest that that would be through staff. The construction plan, again, acknowledging comments about squeezing the jelly and getting it done sooner and so on and so forth. I think the broad strokes need to be laid out. I don't think we need to know how many cars where, but I do think the seasonal restrictions, time restrictions, access and route, and general parking areas, let's outline the concepts and get on the same page with those. And I think, again, through staff to get the draft together, this isn't anything new. And just to the extent of importance, typically, I don't think we need to get super granular. And then I did want to comment on the noise. I don't disagree with the concept of maybe the dinner cutoff is a little bit earlier so that the natural flow of conversation and cleanup of tables and so on can happen at night. I think it's also kind of specific to the location. So you may want to think about if there's an area, I know it's more difficult with respect to operations, but there may be an area that's completely contained by your buildings almost, whereas there's a couple of spots that aren't.
I think that's exactly right, and that's sort of why I keep pushing the board to give us leeway on this, and even if we have to come back and adjust it from there, because we have a huge incentive, again, to maintain the sort of harmonious nighttime deal, but at the same time, we want to run the restaurant successfully and be able to run it year-round. So finding that balance isn't something that we all can probably work out here. I want to give the guys that are on the ground, enough wiggle room that they can figure that out and make that work. And if for any reason they're doing a bad job, we can come back and you can, put the cuffs on us. So that from my perspective, I agree with you. And I'm pushing just to have that much leeway in the technical decision to be able to sort out, where those places are, exactly what that timing is.
Sure. And I'm not going to speak for the board because it's not my place, but I think you've heard the concerns, and it's going to be up to you to bring back something, and then it's going to get voted one way or the other, and there may be some modifications. Last point is that with respect to the 10 p.m. with the recyclables and the jingling of glass, I realize the fenced trash area is off the northeast kind of India Street corner. I would strongly suggest you consider at this point, before you get into construction, maybe opened or doored enclosure, shed style. You can add sound attenuation to the interior of the structure. You'd be able to address it all during your construction phase, and it will also provide the added benefit of pest control, either nuisance or Board of Health type pest. And that may go a long way in curbing potential complaints. So I'm not asking you to submit it as part of your plan, but I am asking you to consider it.
What I was going to say is it's not reflected here, but I believe internally that is the plan to cover that for just the reasons you said.
Yeah, and aesthetics too.
Exactly. Just clean it up and keep
Okay.
it quiet.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Holly or Leslie, before we open the public hearing, would you think you want to tell us?
Just a couple of things. On the construction concerns, the board has typically required a construction management plan for projects in areas where they feel that's necessary. So I think that's something you should definitely include in your decision. And I happen to be on a sort of internal work group now with some other town staff that's being led by the town manager because construction, trash, and parking and other issues have been sort of problematic. So I think that's something that we should pay attention to. For work in the downtown, I think the board has typically restricted work to occur between September 15th and June 30th with some blackout dates like Stroll Weekend, Memorial Day Weekend, daffodils, some of those things. So if you want something different.
But that was exterior.
Exterior construction.
Yeah, and, any like street blocking type stuff.
And
where
then,
there's like extra blocking,
Yeah.
like if somebody's like a moving
and
situation.
then I just had a question through you to the applicant. In that back corner closest to the master's property,
Yeah.
what are you proposing there now?
I mean, nothing.
Would access be restricted so it's only employees or?
Yeah, to be
it's
honest,
more-
we haven't proposed anything. It would be sort of back of house for the kitchen, but probably relatively unused.
Okay, well, because she, at the last meeting, raised a concern about noise and the location of her property. So I think it's important for the board to know exactly what's going to happen back there.
And to have the plans reflect it clearly, if that's okay.
Like if it turned into like, say, a staff smoking area. I'm not trying to suggest that.
They're very quiet
But it
smoking
happens at Stop
cigarettes.
and Shop right in the front of the building.
Well, I guess, and maybe Sarah, we can talk about this, but if there are specific restrictions you want on that, do you want it closed from human access? Again,
No.
the
I
guys
think what
out there
Leslie's
smoking
saying,
a cigarette.
somebody may ask what is happening if that's not. That's all.
It's probably used exactly as it is now, which is
Well,
sort of a pass through and,
Yeah.
I think we just should be clear on that because give 5 years, we all may be living on Mars and somebody else will have to decide this and we want to have some records they can look at.
Can I comment?
Yes,
Clear
please.
on how we can represent that? Okay.
So with respect to that corner, just on a couple of clarifications or concerns or comments. The site plan, one of the site plans indicates that there would be a fence that extends from the west to the east corner. However, the typical post indicators aren't there, so it's not quite clear, even though it's labeled as fenced trash receptacle areas. So that's one thing. The other thing I would suggest is that if this is intended to be a pathway, then I would suggest that you submit a plan that indicates perhaps partitioning off the other area where the storm drainage is with some type of a fence, so that basically what you're doing is you're structuring the environment so that it works the way you intend it to work when someone else is there, because then that precludes the chance of someone, for instance, if you're looking at the steps at the bottom, and you want it to be a path to the right and around the corner, then somehow fence that in, the rest of that in a way that works with your aesthetic for the development. If it's some type of a garden space worked in there, so it's not a seating place, but so that pathway, either by fencing or by some type of retainage that might be raised beds or something. I realize you've got drainage in there, so
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out ideas.
Yep.
Something that directs the human environment and controls it so that you're not, or the operators are not constantly fighting, having this open space where people will tend to want to use the space for one reason or another. There's not a lot of ground space in town. There's not a lot of ground space on this lot. So if you can restructure the environment so it's not going to normally be used or easily be used, that might be something that would be helpful for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Leslie, did you have anything else? Okay, Holly? Okay, Sarah?
Before you open the public hearing, can I just run through the concerns that came in at 5 o'clock?
Oh, sure.
And just my quick response to them. So there shall be no seating or tables permitted on the south side of the meeting house, and any hardened surface there is to be used for passage only. That's what we've just been talking about, and we'll come up with a way to address that, and we agree to that. Outdoor area shall have nothing amplified, no live music, and no outside bar. All patrons must vacate the outdoor patio area by 10. Well, we've just talked about the 10 piece. We're not proposing any live music or outside bar. The concept of no amplified music, this may be a technicality, but my understanding is that all music to an extent is amplified. So what we would be proposing is some sort of low level, sort of dinner level music, not the thumping,
Right.
you can't talk over it kind of music, but that low level sort of dinner type music. And to the extent that that's considered amplified, we would want to have that. Otherwise, we would agree to that.
Lawrence Welk.
Yeah, Lawrence Welk, with the
Okay.
bubbles and everything.
Okay.
Windows shall be closed when serving or entertaining. That's fine. That's really our proposal anyway. Exterior motors and fans shall be of low noise models and noise insulated. That's fine. Applicant shall apply annually to the board in order to review the outdoor service area, so long as the outdoor service area is being used. We don't want to have to come back every year, but I think that 1 year trial is good. And I think you also have put in your decisions, and I would expect you to do it in this one, that you can always reopen the public hearing if there are concerns brought forth. And then restrictions imposed upon the applicant relative to outdoor seating and noise abatements may not be modified without public hearing before this board. That's fine too. We'll come up with some appropriate language for the decision on that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to open the public hearing. You've heard some further information from the applicant and some of the board's thoughts. Are there some of you who'd like to come up to the mic and identify yourself and speak if you would? Either side is good. Thank you. You like that side? Feel free to go there. Okay. You may need to pull the mic down to be able to write. Great.
Thank you.
Could you
Thank
tell
you
us your
so
name
much
again? We
for-
know Ms. Masters, but tell us your name for the record, please.
Oh, I am Cielo Masters. I own Craft Master of Nantucket. I live in the second floor of my store. I just want to mention something. Last night, I'm going to the office and I tried to looking for some papers. They be list some place and try to look in all this time because was a proposal for DiMarco like 10 years ago. Then I know he write a letter to the planning board and I found in the letter. So I just want to read the letter if it's okay with you. And because I want to bring a boss from David, because I know him very much scared if he is here. And this is exactly what he say he's here because the noise, I know they say they plan to store that in the bag and I'm very grateful with that. But if David is here, that concern very much for him. So if I can I read it? Okay, so, and please, and she write something here. Please discard what is not applicable to this proposal and have in consideration for what is applied to this matter. And this here, to the.
I'm going to ask you too if we could have a copy made of that after you're done
Yes.
speaking so we can.
And here is his letter. Too,
Okay,
because
thank you.
That's his. So he said, I had been good friends with Don DiMarco for 30 years, helping him out much as possible, wherever. We realize outside seats complete with outside bar will be much too noisy for our family to sleep at night, as our bedroom and our son's bedroom are only in a few feet away from the proposed outdoor bar and tables. Don has his restaurant on the market to sell it. We plan to grow all here and live here the rest of our life and then pass our home to our son. That is why I am here today to ask you to please deny this proposal because if it's allowed, it will be difficult for me to work and provide for my family when it's almost impossible to sleep at night. This is the only house we have. We don't have any other place to go. Thank you for listening us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, that's them.
And I hope you heard Ms. Alger talk about how they have made some decisions to remove the area closest to your house from exterior patio. Did you hear her say that?
Sorry, again?
Sure. Did you hear Ms. Alger say that they're not going to have the exterior patio right near your window?
Yes, and that's what I said. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And I just want to.
No, I appreciate that. I just
David
wanted to be sure you heard all the rest that had happened.
So grateful with them. Thank you so much.
So if you would give a copy of that letter, perhaps to Mrs. Snell, that would be,
That's the original, right?
Yes, that's the original.
Yeah, I'll get it.
Thank you so much.
thank you very much. And did you want to say something too?
Very, very briefly, thank you, Sarah, for addressing the issues.
Could you
on
give
that.
us your name? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Keith Yanko. I
Right.
represent Cielo Masters at 7 India Street. Thank you to Attorney Alger for addressing the issues in that late 5 o'clock letter. I don't know, did everybody get a copy of that already?
No.
As well? Okay. I've got originals to send around, but if the meeting's going to be continued, you'll have time to look at it. But Sarah addressed each one, and the only area that was not agreed upon was whether you're going to have speakers outside in the patio amplifying anything. I know that musicians, you know, when Jeff Ross plays his acoustic guitar, it's actually more audible when he uses the amplifiers, but still, the idea of any music out there, any amplification is requested that specifically be not allowed.
Thank you. I think that what we'll see is staff working with Attorney Alger to try to develop a point-by-point list on various topics. So
without question.
we'll probably have a chance to revisit that further.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Ms. Moon?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of quick things. Initially, one of my concerns was just changes to stormwater management on the site, and I realize there's not much change in impervious surface here, but I'll be interested in seeing Mr. Pesci's letter with the inclusion of the new dry wells. So I'll take a look at that before the next hearing. And then just to actually your point earlier about the tree, I know that there's not a whole lot of exterior work happening on the Center Street side of the meeting house per se, but as this is likely to get carried forward another month, I wondered if it might be possible to make sure that the tree committee and tree warden is at least aware of the work that is going on with that addition on the north side, if there's crawl space, foundation work happening structurally, just because obviously the root structure of that
Right.
tree is pretty massive.
It's so
and-
big, yes.
Yeah, just so that if there are any potential impacts, they usually have suggestions or ways to mitigate for it and address those initially. So it'd be great to make sure that they had an opportunity to comment.
I think
on the
Leslie's
proposed work.
taken a note on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak this afternoon? I think we're going to continue the hearing. Do I have a motion to continue the hearing until August 12th? Steve, first.
I just wanted to comment, with respect to amplified music and speakers, I would like to suggest that the applicant looks into some of the, it's not new technology, but it's new to Nantucket. I'm not aware that it's being used. There's a vendor, Acoustispade. It's a directional ultrasonic. You're allowed, it basically is a wireless speaker system. There's a host of others out there, Bluetooth enabled and so on and so forth. And it allows you to create literally audio zones at tables, table by table. So it's a directional, precise sound direction. In a way, it's like a sound laser. And what that does is that eliminates any potential concern. I'm not suggesting that the applicant would have one for each table, but I'm just saying, avail yourselves to the information and see if it's something you can use, because again, further down the road, if this is something which I understand will be open to review under the special permit process, deal with it now and get it out of the way, build it into your plan. You're going to be so much further ahead of the ball.
And just to piggyback on that, I think too, as some of us get older, most of us get older one way or another, people with hearing issues probably would really appreciate that if they had more control of their tables and things like that. So it may be a real feather in your cap if you use something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, I can't remember, did we have a motion to continue?
Make a motion to continue to August 12th.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you everyone for the thoughtful, careful work.
May I just ask a question?
Sure.
For the next meeting, just so I'm clear, we're going to revise our hotel management plan, come up
Right.
with a construction management
Right.
plan, attempt to address the tree issue.
Right.
Clarify the seating, the area,
Right,
I guess, south of the meeting house.
Right.
And then work with staff to come up with a proposed draft decision that
perfect,
incorporates those
absolutely.
things. Is that everything?
That's it.
Okay, great. I won't remember that when I walk out of the room, but.
Well, we all heard it, it's on the record right here, so
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for everybody for coming. And now we're going to move to the next item, which is number 4119, Jonathan Henke, 3 Friendship Lane. Holly, do you want to tell us anything about this?
This is a secondary residential lot, very similar to one you've seen right next door. Very, very typical application that the board has seen. There's the proposal.
Okay, questions from anybody to start here?
No. It was an open lot.
it's the next one that has the second driveway. So we're not to that yet. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. Are you the applicant?
Attorney for the applicant,
Thank you.
Brian Swain.
Thank you. Greetings.
Thank you. This is a vacant lot, so I guess the details are that shared driveway easement, and if there's a proposed tertiary down the road, the market rate lot would retain the rights to that. Otherwise, creating affordable housing.
Well, we thank you for doing that, and your client. Does anybody have a question? This is a permit, so do we need this is a permit, right?
It's a special permit,
Yeah.
so you
So
need
we
to activate
need,
an alternate.
Ladera, if you would be so kind. Questions, if you have any, feel free to start, or anybody else?
I have a question, and I don't know if it has anything to do with anything, but on this side of the road, it is a bit of an incline, right? And one of the things I notice on this road is a lot of those driveways, even when they have the cobble, your 12-foot cobble, that driveway material, whatever it is, lands in the road more often than not, as well as along the bike path, which could be argued is unusable, but it is a private road and a private bike path, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so I'd just ask that you keep that in mind as you design your
I will. I
driveway
live in that
to try
neighborhood
and-
too, so I'll personally keep an eye on it.
Thank you.
No, it's a good
Leslie?
point.
Just to add to that and something sort of new, the apron should extend 10 feet beyond the edge of the sidewalk, not 10 feet from the edge of pavement. So I think that helps, and sometimes that language doesn't always make it into the decisions, but it should. And then just for the board, at the past few meetings, we've had some modifications to rear lot subdivisions where a shared driveway was proposed, it was shown in a location, and then they decided to move it.
Yes.
So to me, having them come back to the board seems a little unnecessary and maybe something we should think about going forward, since those are just now coming up. So
Good idea.
I'd like to suggest that you include language that if they move the location of the easement, they don't need to come back with a revised plan.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. If anybody'd like to speak on this matter, here's your chance. Yes, Stephen?
Actually, Brian, what can you tell us about the bridle path easement? I'm just curious while it's up there.
So that was to benefit a place called Surfside Staples, which was up on Somerset Road, no longer in existence. The entire neighborhood from Bartlett Road up around Friendship down through Equator, past Enterprise, Topaz, that whole area has the easement around it, but there's vegetation everywhere. It's overgrown. Doesn't really serve a purpose.
Thank
But
you.
is that land like a paper road? Like
No,
unusable?
that's an easement on private land.
Gotta get rid of that. That's crazy.
Well,
I mean, is that part of the lot?
That's part of the lot, yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. that's
So
wild.
would that mean, excuse me, Madam Chairman, so would that mean that could be a public way?
no.
No, that's
Walking way?
private land.
No, so it would just be if you were on a horse?
If you were a
You
part of
could use
Surfside
it
Stable.
If you were associated with that stable.
Oh, but the stable's not
But the
there. Oh,
stable-
I see.
And I
Okay.
imagine you don't, well, you might since you're a lawyer, but your client probably doesn't want to pay to try to
No.
remove that. So I think that's going to be there and probably
It's there.
be forgotten until it's disappeared under the blackberries or. Okay, anybody else from the public want to speak to this? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have Ladera and the rest of we Hardy band over on this side. What's your pleasure?
I'd like to make a motion to approve with the staff recommendations and their comments. And also, if and when there is a need to adjust the driveway easement, the staff recommendation would be acceptable. And there would be no need to come back to the planning board.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is number 42-19, Peter H. Kaiser and Thea K. Kaiser, 24 Surfside Road. We have several items here. We have a secondary, a tertiary, and a secondary driveway, second driveway access. Is this yours too?
This is, yeah.
Okay.
Brian Swain.
You're having a big night too, like Sarah.
Well, not as big as Sarah's, but
No, okay.
baby steps, I guess. Again, Brian Swain, attorney for the applicant. Thea Kaiser and Peter Kaiser are here. This property probably looks familiar to most of you. It was subdivided through an A&R. The lot itself is 3 times the minimum lot size. Don Bracken did the plan. He's here too. What we're asking for is a special permit for a secondary curb cut. If you see the proposed access point, that's where the proposed secondary and tertiary dwelling will go. The intent is to record the plan so that the secondary and tertiary will actually become a primary and secondary. For financing purposes, my client has to have the secondary and tertiary built, get the CO, and then record the A&R after it. So he'll have to apply to the building permit, the building department, and re-permit it to be a primary and secondary, if you're following.
I'm afraid I lost a link there. Could you
Okay.
try that one more time?
So here's what the lot looked like initially. It's like that, and he subdivided it into 3 new lots.
Right.
This was approved, I think, 2 months ago.
I remember.
Yeah.
So what he's going to do on the western portion of it is draw the lot line down. When he goes to permit it, he's applying technically for a second and third dwelling. There's an existing
But it's
primary
gonna
dwelling
be
already on the lot.
Right.
So after he gets a certificate of occupancy, he has to refinance it. He'll record the plan so that he has just one single lot that will in turn become a new primary and secondary.
I gotcha.
So what has been the secondary and tertiary becomes the primary.
Primary and the secondary on,
Yeah.
on a newly released lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the tertiary would adhere to obviously 650 square
Yeah,
feet or less.
it does. Yep.
That's the second.
As of now, the way the secondary and tertiary are submitted, they conform to I think the 20% difference requirement. This tertiary isn't looking for any waivers, so it complies already to the bedroom count, the parking, the 650 square feet. So, and we're only doing this secondary curb cut permit for financing purposes. Once the lots get released, he gets the CO. He won't have 2 curb cuts on that lot. All 3 lots, as they are subdivided through the A&R, will be conforming with just 1 curb cut
A piece.
apiece.
So this to me looks like it's a subdivision.
It's already been
It's
subdivided.
already been subdivided.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first one like this I've seen, Leslie.
Usually they get torn down. That's the thing.
Yeah.
The building's in the wrong place.
Yeah, so
Nobody thought about this stuff.
If you see the garage,
Yeah.
when you come in through the driveway, that's on a lot line that's straddling the proposed
Yeah.
secondary and tertiary, and also on another lot. So you, from a building permit perspective, you'd have a setback intrusion. So you can't get a certificate of occupancy if you have a house straddling 2 different lot lines. You have a structure on 2 different lots. So when he gets the CO for the secondary and tertiary, refinances, tears down the garage, all the lots will be conforming to the intensity regulations, side yard, frontage, zoning. The plan has already been approved for the subdivision. It's a difficult way to do it, but he has to do it to get a loan and then refinance, get the CO. It's more the banks forcing him to do it this way than his own intent.
I was just going to say that, I think this is an interim solution that requires a special permit and these other permits, when in the end, once the subdivision plan is recorded, everything will be conforming again. So I would recommend that you approve it.
Holly, do you have any comments either?
No, I was actually trying to pull up that A&R plan. What month was that, Ryan? Do you remember? I have it.
3 months ago?
It's just a backward.
January or February,
Okay,
perhaps?
hold on, I got it.
So will she point that and ask?
Yes, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Leslie. Leslie, just curious procedurally, will the applicant have to come back in to rescind the special permit or after the fact, once the lots are created, or it doesn't make a difference?
It doesn't make a difference. I mean, technically, the board doesn't have to rescind special permits once they're no longer needed. They're just not applicable anymore. I mean, we've done that as a practice just to clear the record at the registry. So at some future time, someone knows what happened and why it happened. But he may or may not even record it. I mean, this may just be very temporary,
I think
just to
we
show
should-
to the
yeah.
bank they have this permit.
I think it'd be better to record it though and have it be clean in case he sells down the road or something.
Absolutely. We would do either an attorney's affidavit or something rescinding it and showing correspondences with Leslie or Andrew.
That'd be a good idea.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious.
So,
Yes, see if Holly-
she's still looking. Okay. Madam Chair, so I just have a question on the parking. So in the future, just thinking, because right now, 2 parking spaces are provided inside
You're
the
going to act on this,
garage.
okay?
I am?
It's your turn.
Oh,
Okay.
does that mean I don't ask?
No, that means you can ask him.
Well, we got in the driveway.
So then the garage is going to come down. Is there a replacement garage? Those 2 parking spaces move
There's ample parking in the
right
driveway.
to the forward area of it,
Correct.
right? Okay, so then, basically, the only thing about this that I looked at was those 2, well, they seem horizontal, but they're in front of the secondary dwelling. There are 2 parking spaces. And I have been trying to figure out how they get out of there without backing into First Way. Because I think that's something we want to try and
Yeah.
limit anyway, is the backing into First Way, just because it's become more and more of a traveled way than it.
Understood.
At
I
one
think there's a
time
turnaround at the tip of one of them.
Well, so, is it 1, 2, 3, 4? Oh, never mind, you guys are on this one, never mind. I'll go later.
This is the A&R plan, I just wanted to show, give the board.
If you park in here, you pull out. I'll go back.
No, I got that one.
So
This
where's
is-
the parking again?
Well, what we were looking at was to answer the other question about what was the subdivision plan
Right, originally.
and I was just taking up space with a question that I can ask later.
So go back to it, just
Yeah. Just if you
give you
could-
bearings.
But
Right.
on that plan, the other one, Holly, if you don't mind.
Yep.
This is going away, right?
Yeah, that's going away.
So here this is paved driveway, so would the parking be kind of?
There's
there?
parking there too. I think Campbell's concern was more with the one on First Way. I just spoke to
Where your
Don.
pen is, those 2 spots.
Here.
Right here, is it 2 and 3, spots 2 and 3? I mean, I see how 1 and 4 can easily get out, but I'm just thinking I drive in and I park, and then
Would you?
if
pull
I'm in
forward?
3, how am I getting face forward to head
We
out
could
was
extend
more
the parking
idea.
further south down so that it would have a turnaround space where that second little inlet cut is.
Mm-hmm.
And we could submit that to Leslie
Yeah.
for like staff approval.
Yeah, I'm just thinking somehow to,
Not to back up.
Yep.
that would be ideal, I think.
But through you, Madam Chair. Leslie, there is a street list, however, of streets that you can't back onto, and
Correct.
First Way is not one of them.
Sorry.
I don't believe.
Hold on, let me double check.
No, Surfside is, but
Yeah.
First Way is not. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, just to be clear that it's,
But
I'm
if
I'm not
it's a-
taking
if
away
it's
from
a
Campbell's
special permit,
concern, yeah.
We still have discretion if we think
Yeah.
it's
And if they'll add
needful.
parking space.
And Madam Chair, if I may, just and that's why I indicated in the staff report that with its proximity to Surfside
Right.
Road, that yes, it's required within the bylaw, but not on First Way, and they indicated one already.
Okay. So Leslie's looking up the street list of where it's required, but we have discretion if we think it's close enough to Surfside that,
Well, it's Surfside, but it's also very close to the school, and the school
That's true.
parking lots are accessed through there.
that's true.
So I think there's just traffic. So it's just a consideration that they could
Leslie?
Yeah.
get in and out.
I thought I had it, but I can't.
Okay, so First Way does not require, well, excuse me, a on-site turnaround is not required for driveway accesses located off of First Way. And again, like, this is a temporary permit that they're asking for. So as soon as this driveway is no longer a second driveway, they can construct it however they want to construct it, as long as it meets the zoning bylaw. So
But it'll still
maybe-
require 4 spaces? Is that the idea?
it would require however many spaces are required for whatever
I think it
is
says
left on that lot. I mean,
4-bedroom, right?
Yeah.
One in tertiary.
We were acceptable to whatever condition would be, make the board happy to alleviate backing out on parking, so. The lot's sized appropriately, I think it's the R10 zoning district. They're allowed as a matter of right, primary, secondary, tertiary, and there's, across the board, no matter where you are, there's plenty of parking to do that, anywhere on the island, so. We'll make it work any way we can.
Leslie?
so maybe to be clear, my point was whatever condition you put on this isn't going to matter once
Because the permit.
once
will
the
go away.
subdivision plan is recorded. Because they won't need the second driveway special permit anymore.
Then I think we let it go.
Okay.
All right, this is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen. If anyone would like to speak, please feel free to come forward. Would your clients like to speak, or we're happy to see you. Thank you for coming. You get to be on TV. You can wave to your friends. Okay, if you don't want to, are we ready to close the public hearing? Oh, please. Just introduce yourself if you don't mind.
PJ Kaiser, son of the applicants. Thank you guys for your time. Obviously, like you said, this is going to be a very temporary situation. Unfortunately, we had to do it this way, but it also won't be the last time that we're up here, looking to get any permits passed or relinquished or anything. So just wanted to say thanks for your time this time around and for the future as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Are we ready to close the public hearing?
So I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, Nat moved and John seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so I think we need to do these one at a time. Leslie, the point you made about aprons, is that applicable?
The sidewalks on the other side of the street,
Okay,
so,
okay,
no.
thank you.
I think there's been some work done over there, though. I'm pretty sure it's on the other side.
Okay, so is there a motion for 42-19? That's the second driveway.
Motion to approve.
Nat moved and John seconded
Yes, with staff recommendations.
with staff recommendations. Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, next one, secondary dwelling. Is there a motion?
That's the tertiary?
The secondary.
Secondary, yeah. Make a motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Second.
Okay, John moved, Nat seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? And then tertiary,
I'll make the same motion and approve with staff recommendations.
Second.
okay, John moved, Nat seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you
Great,
very
thank you.
much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, folks. We appreciate your being here.
Yes.
Okay, we have a sketch plan for 52 Burnell Street.
Somehow, the packet
Yeah,
didn't include
welcome. How are you?
24 Surfside.
Good.
What happened there?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Toby Strassenberg. We're working on this family project. It's owned by the La Barca Realty Trust. There's 6 of us. We don't all share equal part ownership, but we're kind of split down the middle, 50-50 with my family and then cousins of mine. Had one discussion with Mr. Boris about the property and kind of was able to ask him a few things about it. And where there's 86,000 square feet, basically a 738 is noted above. It's really old. Pretty sure this is maybe the second or third time lots were created in the neighborhood, other than a one big farm. Our most ultimate decision was to try to do 2 lots, splitting the property essentially in half and almost sort of equally by size. And then if on this, let's see, on either the second or the third page, yeah, that would be the existing house, 52 Burnell, is the pink lot. And that's the lot that's going to be my cousin's, or half of our trust, which is going to be sold or attempted to sell. We actually already sort of maybe have some potential buyers, one of which is interested in keeping it open space. So I also designed it so you could potentially in the future have another lot in that front 40,000 square feet. I think that would change the dynamic a little bit, but I'm also hoping that in the future it kind of retains its like estate feel, larger than the current zoning required. The driveway and the turning circle, or the layout T, is something I just wanted some feedback on. The driveway off of Burnell Street is 20 feet. You see it there. Alongside that 20 feet is another 20-foot driveway that runs the entire 500-foot length of our property and goes to the Lathrop, currently Pioli property behind us. You can see it right there. I was out there this morning, like really looking at it. So basically, you have a 40-foot wide area where the driveway is in and it's out. You know, you would be kind of half straddling it. If you continued on the driveway past where we turn in, which is right at the very beginning, all the way down to the end of our property line in the corner, the driveway is kind of meandering. So we had discussed about whether I create a way, whether that's a 20-foot way with a turning circle or a T, or create like a shared driveway easement, where I think my neighbor would be okay with that, but he had some questions that he sent me, which I could read to y'all. But I really just wanted some feedback and try to get it as best nailed down as I can before I move forward with any kind of engineering or surveying. Right. So I would be requesting a waiver of strict compliance, but do want to provide everything possible and required in order to make it happen.
Okay. Madam Chair, just want to, Leslie, what did we just do out here last meeting? Didn't we just do something out here? With that little jiggly thing that goes out like that? Isn't that other lot landlocked without this?
Nah, it was this lot over here was divided.
Okay. I just want to get my head back on what we're doing.
Yeah.
What we did already.
I know, I did the same thing. I'm like, wait a minute.
This is reminding me of.
I actually took
every once
that
in a while
from the
this kind of thing comes up.
That's from the same plan. My neighbor A&R'd. He did a conveyance of essentially half the back part half went to his 15 Plainfield lot, and the 50 Burnell, which is what you see with the circle driveway, stayed the same.
It's like that thing off Cliff Road last year or the year before. So do they need frontage at all right now for anything?
No, they only have 20 feet of frontage on Burnell Street.
But they don't need frontage to do anything that they've already been done somehow, right? Or no?
So the lot's pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
So it's a buildable lot. They could build a primary, secondary,
Okay, that
tertiary.
was your answer to my
right
question.
now.
Okay, so they don't need to make a 20-foot legal road, like a reduced, okay.
Not to use the lot as a single lot, the way it's being used now, but
What
to
is it,
divide
LUG
it.
1 there, out there? I don't even know, what is
It's
the zoning?
SR 20.
It is? Oh, now I know why it's here. Okay, I thought it was LUG 1. Okay. Oh, that's a whole nother story.
So
We've been-
this
we've
is
been
because
there
you're trying to.
Are we
resolve
trying to do this
dispute.
the cheap way and just keep it the same, but be able to build at the same time? That's what I'm hearing from you, at least what I can tell.
Well, I don't know.
Because if you were like, this could be, a lot could happen here if there was a road built.
Correct.
Correct, Leslie? The
So
sewer here,
if
right? Isn't
there is sewer
here?
in Burnell, I don't think they're connected to sewer. no.
Correct.
And there's water, which I don't think they're connected.
No, but like it's there, is what I'm saying.
It's there, so if the board were inclined to approve a two-lot subdivision, they could have up to a primary, secondary, and I don't think tertiary is actually allowed in SR 20, but I'll check
Yeah,
on that.
but if they
On
keep
each of
it,
the-
but
on
if they
each of the
restrict
two.
the lot size and keep it like an acre a lot, aren't these lots over an acre?
Yeah, he's proposing two,
Close.
almost
Just
40,000
shy.
sure foot lots.
Yeah.
Of 40 and
Okay,
37.
okay, I'm looking at the lot number versus the square footage there, okay. So, sorry to talk over you, I don't mean to
No,
do
no, no,
that.
you're doing
I'm
great,
just trying
yes.
to, I have to,
Yeah,
when this
I'm
stuff
trying to
happens, I have to
understand it
be
too.
able to figure it out, especially after Kaiser's. I'm still confused, but I know what they're doing, I'm still confused. But this, so you want to keep these restricted for future subdivision, as long as we give you this oversized division? I mean, is that what we're sort of doing here, Leslie? No. Okay.
I haven't talked with him about it. I mean, I thought your proposal was to divide your existing lot into two.
Which it is.
But
Only
it's two
two.
oversized lots, though.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah,
correct.
That's what I mean.
So as the rules state, I've designed it and with a little bit of conversation with Mr. Vorst, and I haven't engaged a surveyor engineer or talked to Ms. Snell about this, but to facilitate a future potential further subdivision, yeah, I'm just leaving it as this now. It's also facilitating a transformation, if you will, and an existing, we have an existing garage with an apartment above it of, a 440 square feet, and then the 1,100 square foot house. So really, I'd need to add a septic line, add a water line, and
Yeah.
then get a configuration for future power, basically. Because actually, we are metered as 52 and 52 and a half Burnell Street currently. And that's something else I wanted to just ask about is we're not opposed at all to creating a 20-foot way with a T or turning circle. Or, as I talked with Mr. Vorse, if I could get my neighbor to agree on a shared driveway easement type situation, he thought it would facilitate an easier subdivision. Because then at that rate, we're not talking about, here I am trying to use 20 feet to subdivide
With another road next to it or something.
with another road right next to it. So
Yeah.
it is interesting, though, and I would encourage you guys to just visit if you could. And once you get onto the road, which was existing before Plainfield, but if my neighbor took his 20-foot road next to my 20-foot road, you stood on 20 feet off my property line, and here comes my neighbor 20 feet.
Yeah.
It's bye-bye the back of Plainfield. All those trees would have to go, which there were no trees to begin with when this was created. But since then, of course, in my lifetime, there's been some pretty big trees, and we do have some massive cedar trees on the property. So I'm trying to facilitate adding some utilities that don't completely disrupt the access. Not necessarily forcing my neighbor to open up
Right.
his 20-foot.
Yeah.
And he's totally amenable. I mean, we're buddies, so whatever we need to do, either jointly or, separate. But there is some very close areas, specifically on one property on the rear of Plainfield. They've just gotten oh so close that it would infringe. And another thing I was doing today is trying to locate my new driveway, using the existing driveway to get to lot 2, which would be in the back where you would take a right by the little horseshoe half circle. Locating the other driveway in a sense that it would both, provide good access to the existing house, but also be able to potentially be used by another future lot. But I'm unsure what exactly you guys are looking for as far as what would I need to do. I think I can install a sewer line and not disrupt my road. There's a big enough median since we drive in the middle and there's 20. I could actually put any new utilities on our driveway per se. And there was sewer. We were just put into the sewer district.
Yes.
Recently.
Remember that.
So, and I had the contractor who was doing a sewer line for Territory. I actually have a stub waiting for me right in the road.
Yeah.
Which, in doing more homework on this, our intent is to actually try to gravity feed as long as we can up the driveway, and then pump from the houses. It's just way less impact on the ground. But what I'm looking for is kind of a lower impact. Try to keep it the same, get some exemptions, but not ask for anything crazy, and just do the best I can to.
Crazy.
I wonder whether it would be better to have you, say, sit down with Leslie and work out some more details, because I'm feeling a little bit at sea here with all the other
You're one step
factors
ahead
here.
of yourself right now.
Leslie,
So he did talk with Andrew, and if I can maybe just
right,
try to
cut through here.
Yeah,
narrow this
condense
a
it.
little bit. So the number one question is, would you all entertain a division of this lot into 2 buildable lots? Then, would you entertain, if he can't work out something with his neighbor for whatever reason, to use a 40-foot wide layout? Would you entertain a 20-foot wide layout for the road? Because that's all that he has control over now, is a 20-foot strip. Using the other 20-foot strip would require cooperation from the neighbor. So I think getting some direction on that would be helpful. And, it's just a sketch plan. It's not a preliminary plan. But, they're in the sewer district and the water district. I think that's something the board would require, is for the lots to be connected. But mainly, I think the direction that he's looking for is, would you entertain a subdivision just using a 20-foot wide layout if that's all he's able to work with?
What is the significance of approving a sketch plan?
We don't have to vote to
Have to.
approve anything. It's really just to give, the property owner some direction before they go and make an investment with engineers and surveyors and all of that. So if it's a no-go,
No.
then,
John?
I just had a question. Leslie, something that's concerning to me is, after the first initial subdivision, if we were going to approve a 2-lot subdivision, then the potential for that 40,000 plus square feet to be subdivided again in the future for another. What do you feel about that? Because if we're going to give a waiver for the 20 feet for the first subdivision, would we be inclined, or to give another for the second subdivision?
So, well, it would depend on the 5 members of the board at the time, but I think if you were inclined to approve a subdivision using a 20-foot wide layout, part of your decision would say, because of the reduced layout, because of the reduced infrastructure, no further subdivision is allowed.
That's my thought.
Yeah.
And the reality is, with the frontage they're probably working with. It's not going to be there anyway. He's sort of indicated some type of modified dead-end street to allow the frontage reduction that's possible in the bylaw. So it may not technically be possible, but you could certainly include that as a condition, which you've done in other subdivision decisions.
This was laid out to begin with for 3 lots, because they would fall within the zoning, excluding the 2,000 square feet of a turning circle or T, which is, they're almost the same layout. And then I believe it's 5,000 for the road. So all the calculations are based on, discounting the road, discounting the circle, then we're left with X. It doesn't really amount, it's not 80,000. So that's why you see this kind of split. There's also a trade-off as far as the front and the back. But it was originally laid out with a circle where you could have 3, or move the road, manipulate the circle a little bit, manipulate the driveway, and you could lay it out
Are
differently.
there any topographic issues here, drainage or anything like that?
Not really. We're not in any wetlands.
And since you're able to get sewer and water, then you don't have to. It's just a little hard when you're looking at it just flat without more of the
Right, which I
details we
actually
sometimes see.
have something that.
Can I ask you a
Yes.
question through you, Steph? I'm wrestling with this. This is a prior non-conforming lot with respect to the fact that it only has 20 feet of frontage in a 75-foot zone.
Yeah.
So what's the authority of the planning board to create a new non-conformity by creating a new lot?
You wouldn't be creating a new nonconformity. You would be granting waivers from the subdivision rules and regs for the roadway layout. So the 20-foot strip would now become, a legal roadway instead of part of the larger lot. And then the new frontage, which would be compliant to the zoning bylaw, would be created as part of the new roadway layout.
So if just along that line, I'm just trying to understand. No, I'm good with this. This is kind of a distraction right now.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, okay.
Well, you have to restrict it.
Subject to having a width that can be used as a roadway to a lot that does not have a lot large enough for the zone, the underlying zones. Having a width for a roadway that can be either approved under subdivision at the 40 or waived and approved at 20, this can be subdivided.
Yeah.
It can be subdivided with the creation of a new roadway.
Okay.
Otherwise, it cannot. And I will say the board has, in the past, many times, reduced the roadway layout for very small-scale subdivisions. Because the point of the 40 feet is to allow enough room for the, roadway, the traveled way, however wide that is, a sidewalk, a tree lawn, drainage, all those things that you may not require or may not be necessary for something that's small in scale.
Okay. And then so the reason I asked this, I was looking at this and I was thinking, well, this isn't our traditional rear lot subdivision. It's more like
There you
a
go.
subdivision in the lot in the rear. And I was just trying to understand that. So I apologize for
No,
taking up
those
the
are
time of the
helpful
group.
questions.
But along those lines, if there's a waiver under the subdivision for the width, restriction can be put on any future potential to subdivide the oversized lots, the 2 oversized lots that are created.
Yeah, so the planning board would include a prohibition on future subdivision in the decision.
Yeah.
And then that would be recorded. And there would also be a document granting enforcement to the planning board that would be recorded. So they would have to come back, you'd have to hold another public hearing, and then you'd have to decide if additional subdivision is appropriate or not. You could also restrict the lot from future second dwellings. And I did misspeak earlier, tertiary dwellings are not allowed in SR 20.
Okay.
So that's not even an option.
So then the last question along that line of thought is, so the basis of those restrictions, they're allowed under subdivision, but also because the waiver of the width and other requirements, for instance, granite edge sidewalks or Cape Cod curbing or whatever, those are all the basis to restrict the future subdivision.
Right. So the decision would have language that, because you allowed the reduced infrastructure, you're connecting that to reducing the future build out.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get an understanding.
And I'm sort of hearing that maybe you need a better plan from them to discuss this further, so maybe we could work on that instead of
I would say,
spinning here.
say what he's doing, like, I went through all this. This is really like crazy. And one day when I brought a surveyor over to my house, all these like new things popped into my head that I didn't think of. You got a whole bunch of things here that are sort of, this is a housekeeping thing. We got existing buildings, people sort of working together, but not maybe working together. Now, you're talking to your neighbor that you're referring to as the big lot further out,
The
right?
guy who just did the A&R behind me, yeah.
Okay. Now, what happens back there, Leslie? Is that locked into that big, can that be subdivided? If this turn and circle legal frontage averaging circle goes in,
So
that guy get to do, what does he get to do?
it would totally depend on the way it's laid out. So if, and this is so speculative, but let's just say that this particular property owner only uses their 20-foot wide strip and their turning circle is located entirely on their property, and you include a condition that, no future subdivision potential is available and no one else can use the road, then you leave it up to the other property owner to come forward with their own plan or to work with this owner to modify the existing plan to come up with something that works for both of them. So granting a reduced roadway layout just on this property with the cul-de-sac just on this property does not allow the abutting property owner to do anything.
And that isn't what we're all about. I just don't want to see any more destruction of, like you said, all them, the screening from those flame field properties. It makes no sense. Having two roads next to each other. That's insane.
Right.
This was laid out in the second version of Massachusetts zoning or land planning. So there's been, today I believe we're on the fourth version of land planning, land use law, all that in Massachusetts at least. So initially, you only needed 20 feet. And I think the minimum you can have in the state, I believe, is 20 feet. But Mr. Vorst had found some other renditions of, this was an A&R, a 4-lot A&R, with the back, the middle, the Tories, and then Wisconsin Trust behind us. So originally I was looking into re-subdividing an existing A&R from back in the day. Found out I couldn't because of the frontage issues, 20 feet driveway. Only way is an approval required with your road and the turning circle.
Yeah.
And only way to further do anything in the future would be to modify that existing AR through the rear lot subdivision provision that then you could maybe split the thing again if you wanted to. Since more than 2 lots creates an imbalance in our family as far as this 50-50 thing, that's not in our best interest right now. So we'd just rather keep them big, keep them nice, and try to hopefully any newcomers have that same idea, as well as there's some big tree moving I'll have to do, some tree removing I'll have to do, but to create the actual separation down the middle, since we have such an awesome buffer, it's really private back there. I'm gonna have to kind of move around quite a few trees, but again, once you turn in there, you'll see it opens up quite big on both sides.
John looks like he's got a motion.
Well,
or
not
a
necessarily
plan,
motion.
a
Yeah.
plan.
No, I just hearing from Nad and Leslie, it sounds like you potentially have some options here. And I think by going one route with the 20 feet and then you're limiting yourself, and from the board, from at least my position would be, I would probably want to restrict further subdivision. So you're really limiting yourself with that first. It sounds like there might be potential for a benefit from both you and the lot in the back, the owner, with maybe combining and getting a 40-foot
Right.
roadway there. So what I'm kind of saying is a better plan would be helpful, but
Oh, yeah,
before you
for
have
sure.
a better plan, find out which is the better plan to
Yeah,
go
there you
with.
go.
So I would say do a little research, talk to your neighbor, find out if there's even an option. If there is an option, that might be something to explore so that you don't waste time and money doing a plan that would only change dramatically to that.
Yeah, so my neighbor, as I mentioned, he's a great guy, and he's totally fine with helping us out as far as the driveway. He just wrote me and asked me these questions. He just said, I would like a clear understanding of why the conversion to an easement would be necessary and what it accomplishes, and how does it help you and how does it help us. And then also, is the purpose of transitioning the current driveway circumstance into an easement so you can subdivide the lot, and this will allow to conform to zoning when you can create two smaller lots from the larger lot. So my question then is, if I can get a shared easement, does it need to extend all the way, the whole entire length of our property? Or can it just extend to where our turning circle would be within our property and his driveway would you just keep on going straight and go right back to his house?
So he's saying create a road, but it has to stop.
Yeah.
With a road.
Well,
Instead of
yeah, I think there's some mixing of terminology. The easement is an issue if the driveway or road continues to cross the property lines. Or they could work something out where the other property owner, shares part of it and then veers onto his own property. I mean, that's a lot to talk about. I mean, maybe we could continue that conversation in the office with him.
I would suggest that you meet with staff and be sure you're clear about what the options are, and then it maybe you want to have your neighbor come in and also sit down together with staff, because then they'll be able to put together a clear explication to both of you about that, and it'll be clear to us when you come back.
Yeah.
Does that sound right, folks? Leslie, does that sound right?
Wouldn't create more frontage.
You can't get frontage from an easement, Leslie.
You can't get frontage from an easement,
Yeah.
but I think the idea would be an easement granted to the other owner, so you don't have two driveways side by side.
Yeah, we gotta eliminate that. Some way you gotta come up with a way to,
Well, it would just
Not
create
do
then
that.
a 40-foot technically.
40-foot driveways, just two of them.
Well, it's a road at that
something.
rate. You'd have
So,
a standard road at that rate.
I'm going to ask if there's anybody here who wants to speak to this matter. Are we in a public hearing on this? No, okay.
No.
Well, just in case anybody was here, I didn't think so, but, so is it the will of the board to ask the applicant to proceed the way we've outlined, to sit down with staff and then be clear about what your options are, then maybe bring your neighbor in for discussion too, because part of what we're wondering is what he asked you and what you just asked us about, if you only had a turnaround, if he wants something from this, like if he wants a more substantial connection to the back because he's got some idea what he's doing with the back. We can't answer that. We don't know what he wants at this point, and you may not know either. So,
Well, I can just one thing about the driveway again, which is probably the most strangest thing about it. Not that it's strange, but it's a meander. He would then gain the ability to not have to chop the trees down to use his driveway. Say if we didn't want to share, Mr. Borst mentioned this. If I create a 20-foot way right there, and I create either a renamed way or it becomes 52 and 52 and a half, only those two property owners would get to use that 20-foot way. He would then have to use his own driveway.
okay, but we need that all to be nailed down so we're clear what we're doing too. So that's why we think we need to have staff kind of nail down details.
Do some more homework on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's kind of why I'm here, just to
Great.
get some more ideas about
So
it.
thanks, you've helped us understand it. So when you come back, we'll be ready to roll, and that's your big plan
All right.
back. So you
gotta
wanna
do this
be sure,
right one time.
Yeah.
be sure you
So-
grab your plat there.
Yep.
No, this is the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else
I'll
anybody
throw it. It's
wants
a lot
to
of
say
work.
about that one, Leslie or anybody? Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not easy to come and do all this formally with, with your thoughts in order and to stand up and speak about it, but we appreciate it.
I enjoy it.
Okay. Okay, so any public comments and anything else? Otherwise, we have a few matters of other business. Next meeting's Steve,
Can I make a public comment?
Yes,
Do I have to
please.
move to do that?
it depends on what it's about.
Or at
Is
least
it-
push
is it-
back from the table?
Why don't you go stand there just in case? It can't be about anything you have a financial interest in. Okay.
Hi, Stephen Welch. Good evening, everyone. Just along the lines of a comment that came up earlier about easements and making changes, that if there was some way, a process that could allow staff to address these things that are de minimis. And I wanted to comment because sitting here and having gone through the process myself, and this isn't on anyone, but it's something I would like the board to consider, is in what instances and what would it look like with matters that are de minimis with respect to special permit approvals that relate to easements, locations of aprons, driveway widths, maybe even percentages or an envelope of where a structure is. What can we give to staff to approve subject to modifications being consistent with the original approval, the intent of the original approval? Because on a 1-month schedule and having to have an application come in the day of a meeting, I just think it's a threshold that if we were able to make changes that were more accommodative without actually changing the underlying structure of the approval, and we're also obviously in accordance with state law, I would just ask that we consider it as a planning board, because it would be, I think, helpful to people to be able to make minor modifications without actually having to come back as a full minor modification or a special permit.
That's sort of what you've been doing with historic district, right? To sort out things that can't be
Yeah,
handled by
a lot of
staff.
times I'll suggest that we have an alternate option so that if you want to, you get an approval for this or this. And otherwise it just solves having to come back and pay the fee or put out notices or whatnot.
Let's put that on for next quarterly planning meeting that is not like a permit hearing meeting. Like we had.
Organizational?
Yes.
Okay.
Would that be good?
Yeah, I mean, just
Yeah,
if I
please.
may, I mean, there's a lot that we do exercise discretion on, but, like this driveway thing with the secondary lots, I mean, that's kind of new because people traditionally came in with their existing primary dwelling, their existing secondary dwelling,
Right.
and their
And
existing
it's-
driveway,
yeah,
and
that's
that's
right.
where it was.
Yeah.
And now people are buying vacant lots, and they come in with a plan, and then all of a sudden, that's party A, but now party B owns the back lot, and now party C owns the front lot, and now they've moved the houses around, and so that process with the secondary lots is kind of evolving just because of,
Yeah.
how
The stuff
people
I
are
agree.
developing them now. But,
You gotta watch what happens, the final plan.
and the other thing
Realize.
too, the plan that's attached to the decision that's recorded at the registry, like, some attorneys will say, yeah, I agree, that's not a big deal if the driveway shifts over 10 feet. And then some will say, well, my client's making this huge investment and I want to make, 150% sure that it's okay. So.
Well, it may be just useful to have a discussion the same way we're experimenting with the A&R process of trying to weed out things and, as you say, streamline in various respects. So good comment, and we'll come back to that
Definitely.
for sure.
The next organizational meeting, if you want.
Thank you.
And we're doing those quarterly. We haven't set the date yet, but we'll be doing those quarterly so we can start work on the comprehensive plan and be working on ATN projects and things like that. So we've got a couple of other things here. I just passed out something that's in draft and wanted to.
Did you guys get a copy? No. Dose and one for Holly.
So, as you know from our June, I think it was 25th meeting, we talked about. 26th meeting, we talked about the National Grid proposal, and you've read about that probably in the very full coverage from the Inky Mirror. Wanted to give you a report for what I've done since then and ask your thoughts on what else we should do from here. And Stephen drafted the letter for the HDC that was presented too, so his material is included in the agenda, as was my kind of summary update to you and what I wanted to ask you in terms of possible next steps. So what I just handed out was a draft of a public meetings request that I'd like to submit to the town, and it's ready to click and send it in, but I don't want to do that without having checked in with you to see what you think. I don't want to also belabor things because we're trying to keep these meetings short if we can, if that's feasible. But first thing I did was to write to National Grid, and using the email that they had provided at the meeting. And as you can see, I got back a very brief statement, like, I think I put it in here. I said all the reasons we had been concerned about this, thinking that that would help them in their next steps to it, to which I got back a fairly non-committal and non-responsive reply that was like, "Hi there, thank you for your comments, and our team will spend some time with what you've sent us and continue to maintain an open dialogue with you and the residents of the island. Enjoy the 4th of July," which I thought was totally unresponsive, frankly, but that's because I used the email for information that they distributed. So I have wanted to lay before you the idea of sending pretty much some summary of what we decide to do tonight, with the gist of that earlier email explaining why we oppose this project to the Select Board. They'll be looking at this at some point, I guess not until August. But I had several other ideas of what we might do. I think that at the point that there's actually something scheduled by the Select Board, we should be sure that planning board members, and I know, Nat, you were concerned about this and attended the meeting too, probably NPEDC.
I got blown up in my phone and I had to leave, but I had my hand up 4 times, but.
Well, I'm sorry.
But that's
they didn't
okay.
see you first.
I did some finding out of something that was in the paper.
Okay.
Too, but go ahead.
Let me
No, go
just
ahead.
run
Yep.
through this. We need to be sure the other members, NPEDC members who aren't part of the planning board, are aware of what's going on here. We need to be clear what we want to say to the select board. We probably want to write to some other part of National Grid, possibly their legal office or their corporate people. I think that we may need legal counsel for the town to clarify what the town has to say about things that National Grid wants to do. And I think if we really seriously believe this should be undergrounded rather than put above ground, we probably want to be thinking about whether there's something we need to develop for the annual town meeting. It may be that there's other paths that might be chosen, or routes that might be chosen.
Yeah.
So that's something I addressed in the public records request. I really feel like the meeting was totally, to my mind, to be frank, pro forma, with not about what people actually thought, although just about everybody there was strongly concerned about it, but rather it was like, check off this box that they had an informational meeting. And I think the select board owes us a much more full-blown discussion of what the options are, and National Grid needs to be on the ball, because what they've said, what was in the materials that you have, among other things, was this is about the supposed emergency situation for the eastern part of the island, the reason for which nobody's explained anything. There's no effort to try to conserve energy or do anything about that. I've heard just recently, I can't remember where, that their claim that they need to be focusing on a new cable back to the mainland is pressing, but now I hear it's not expected till 2045 or something like that. So it just seems to me like there's been no meaningful public information for anybody, and that's not the way government should operate. And so that's a little bit of passion there, I guess you can tell, but I frankly found it outrageous.
Well, I
You were there
hate to
too, Campbell, and
interrupt,
then
but I
also-
sort of have to agree with you. I felt like somehow town administration has not gotten the message that things have changed and that people are aware and people want to be involved. And when they go to these meetings, it's very much like some of the meetings I've gone to, and I don't mean to bring this testy subject up, on the Rotaries, where they say it's a public meeting for input, but you're not allowed to input anything. All the input you're allowed to do is comment specifically on what you like about what's being presented. There's no input about, whereas I think that I personally think a lot of islanders are very intelligent people that experience life on the island every day and have thoughts about it or would like to at least have a venue to engage in a conversation about what's going to happen. Because I feel like, I don't know, I just felt like the way they did it was just one more creation of an adversarial position between the town and the people in the town. And I don't think that's beneficial in the long run to anyone. So that was my feeling. So I really appreciated your follow-up with all the letters and efforts that you've gone to sort of put this on the map.
Well,
if you will.
I hope you see, I feel accountable to you, and it's not just me wanting to express my view. I think if we're going to do
Right.
anything meaningful, we have to be attentive to everybody's view within the board, and I think the NPDC would have thoughts as well. Nat,
I think we're all on the same. I don't think we have to separate.
what did you think about the meeting?
First of all, it's what I found out after the meeting
Okay.
that made what was presented make, I don't want to say more or less sense, but come more clean, is right up here with this other route, okay? I didn't know about this. This is what makes sense, but with more underground removal, more pole removal, because that's where bikes go. Like, Washington Street is like the bike route, right? And we've got poles in the sidewalk. We've finally got the there's the turn thing, So what I was told is basically that there's a route that can eliminate Pleasant Street from being Pleasant Street. Forget about the underground part. The 10 feet. I found out about the 10 feet in the ground thing. That's not. It has to do with National Grid's regulations in their company policy about people working 10 feet in the ground. It's not, so you'd have to have a contractor from off island. If there was something, like, think of it as like, okay, something happens and they can't do it. And we're out here, boats canceled. I don't know.
Okay.
Crazy stuff. I didn't know that, right? The guy sitting next to me didn't tell me that. He told me something else. So it's a lot more than $10 million to do that stretch, which bikes don't go on Pleasant Street the same way they do on
Right,
Washington, is
right,
what I'm
'cause
saying. I'm not
everything
saying
is
Pleasant
out of
Street doesn't have a
Washington,
bike.
no.
I'm saying it's not the same. This needs to get brought back into the picture, with maybe more underground, like, the whole way at some point, not to do with increasing the power route. I'm talking about just in general down there. But this kind of stuff, like, the town's been talking about it, various people. I didn't hear from Lauren on this, but she knows all about this, I'm sure. Lauren Sinatra does.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As far as the third cable goes, I mean, this is off the topic. The state is pushing more electric, just so you guys know that. I'm in all the houses. I know what's going on with all this stuff, and it's kind of crazy. More electric is being pushed that doesn't need to be electric. So we're going to increase our electric use. I don't care what happens. All the affordable, the Sachems is all electric. Every single thing is electric there. And there's more incentives from the state to get free heat pumps. I mean, you wouldn't believe the stuff that's going on. So we're going to have more electric whether we like it or not, because it's driving, whether it's the climate issue and these other things that drive these incentives. It's like the state's pushing it big time. Yeah, you should
Trying to help build renewables.
Poke your head into Lauren's office and she'll tell you some crazy stuff that's happening with that. It's true. So the third cable has almost become like secondary now. Like, I don't even care what happens with that. Someday it's going to happen. Who cares? I care more about this. Underground, doing it right one time, but for routes that matter. If we can get Washington Street, I mean, look at the poles. Now, I went down to Gardner. That guy was right, Holly. I didn't know this. The new poles on Gardner Street, I didn't look up. They are those new kinds.
Yeah, yeah.
The big
That's what I
fat
was trying
ones
to
with
say.
the top that's 5 feet, it's just about 5 feet taller than the others. Now, I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't have done it. I'm just saying I didn't even notice that. I just noticed that the pole's still on the sidewalk and it's
But
ridiculous.
it's really constricted.
I wasn't looking at the pole
Well, and
It was
side.
already
the
constricted
bigger the
capacity.
poles on the sidewalk are, harder for bikes, harder
Oh, it's
for
terrible.
people
But
on
that's-
walkers.
I found out a little bit about the easement stuff. There's something about 10 feet from a dwelling. Leslie, I don't know. I mean, this is what I was told. I don't know how true all this stuff is, but it's bigger
Well,
than just this project's bringing up all these
It
other
made
issues is what's happening.
all the pieces sitting there at the meeting, it made no sense unless somebody had made a decision previously for other reasons.
I think the decisions
Fast and easy
I think the
is what they
decisions
want.
that were made were based on, first of all, the truth about South Beach Street. You want to know the truth about what happened? So when Jeff was director and we put the first cable in 96, well, it was really 95, but 96 was when it was turned on. They knew that the sewer lines, you had to have access to those sewer lines. So, they knew they needed a new sewer route. Excuse me, Holly, I misspoke there. You probably caught me there. That section of the road was left open on the right on purpose by Jeff, and he was actually thinking correctly. Nobody could have predicted 20 years later, but he had them put those cables over those old sewer lines because we needed a new route for a future line. Now, that new route is being mapped out soon by the town with the sewer plan to go, but it's going to go in a different direction. But nobody would have known that in 1996. You had to make a quick decision. So when Erica brought up something about we had to get it, we couldn't get to it because of that's an anomaly. That isn't going to happen in every road. Every road has got different stuff in the ground. We've put all these new sewer lines in downtown, digging stuff up. That's kind of an excuse. They know that they got to dig all these things up, one way or the other. So, but as far as Pleasant Street versus Washington is sort of a separate discussion, right?
But
Don't you think?
that's true, but I think there's also, as Stephen, I think you had said, if you're going to be doing this other work underground, why don't you do it in conjunction?
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
And it's also that the way Erica presented it was like they determined that there's no 16th of an inch way to thread anything through.
Yeah, no,
and that doesn't
caught
add
that.
up to me.
And the other issue is Pleasant Street. When people talk about getting out of their own driveway, I kind of laugh. Look at the disruption that you're going to have disruption no matter what. You're in a 250-year-old downtown. There's going to be something. Pleasant Street can be mitigated. That's not Prospect. And they just did Prospect, and they figured it out. Pleasant Street is not a road that can't be closed here and there and poked around. It's not like it's Washington Street and you have to reverse the truck route up to Crooked Lane. It's not that bad. You know what I mean?
So what, others, do you want to comment on, Stephen? Yep.
Yeah, a couple of things, if I may, Madam Chair. I think next steps, I agree with those you included in what staff distributed. I would suggest, and I agree with Nat, it's a forward-looking thing. Along those lines, just made some notes here. I think it's an opportunity for the community, including the respective public bodies, to kind of come together and address a revised plan. There used to be a plan in the core, very specifically designated area, underground and utilities, but to revise that plan, expand it. And it's an important initiative in various regards, not least of which is protecting and expanding the concept and the perception of the National Historic Landmark and the architectural resources, considering all the economic benefits that bestows on us, number one. Number two is hazard mitigation and storms. This was identified as one of the top 10 goals, if not top 5, if not top 3. In storms, wind damage, and so on and so forth. And then generally also addressing the coastal resiliency concepts. I think part of looking forward in the opportunity is, let's get past we can't do it for this reason, or we can't do it for that, and get to problem-solving elements such as what is the cost? So as a public utility, National Grid, as any business, knows exactly how much money it costs them in any given municipality to underground its utilities. And I believe we should be looking for information on what those actual costs are. I know that they're far south of $10 million per mile, based on their last published data. And I think that would be an important element of what we want from them is what are your costs and what are you basing them on, and give us the public information. Because if we're gonna have a sit at the table and have a cordial but still kind of a brass tacks type of discussion, we need to know what the dollars are, and we need to know as a community, because if it's a co-location element,
Right.
it's an element we're going to be looking at again in our capital requests, and it's also it makes sense to be talking about the dollars and cents. And then I would note that this route in particular is a little bit different than the route that was approved at annual town meeting to be scoped and then to actually have sewer work done. But I think along the lines of moving forward, an over solution may be the way to go with this particular route, at least to start.
Well, there's some places, town on land, poles can be moved. What you're saying is some of it can go under, some of it would be above, depending upon where it is.
But let's use this, if we have to use this as an opportunity to kind of bring a little sunlight to the public utility side of it, being National Grid, I think we as a community can do that if we all know that we're looking forward to a new revised undergrounding plan. And it's not necessarily, you said this and you said that, because if we're going to work together, we need to work together. And the only way we're going to get this done is if we work together. And I'm not saying, I'm not suggesting that people should just casually say things when it comes to a project like this, but you kind of lose track of it. I should just be quiet, but people get in their day to day and they're trying to get their work list done, and things come up, and they may not, because they're focused on a very important aspect of getting a project done, they may not realize that there's something else that maybe is important to the community. So the fact that others in the community have weighed in, I think, is beneficial to the process. But I think we need to be careful not to beat up on each other too much. A little good-natured ribbing and maybe a little, that's okay. But we've got to be focused on looking forward. How are we going to accomplish a revised undergrounding plan? Mm-hmm. So those are my comments for what they're worth.
Thank you. Others want to comment, John?
I just want to say the public records request is a great start. It seems like we've been told what to do without any kind of participation, and it's a case in point where if we work and coordinate with other departments, we might be better our efficiency might be better to, when we're tearing up something, to put, well, I never thought we can update the electric, the sewer, and the water at the same time at one expense. I mean, by getting the records here, and being
Trying to
cooperative
understand
and
it,
working
yeah.
together. And, you know, honestly, if we're looking to do underground, electric or cable, phone, etc., and this is what we want as a town for the future, whether it be 2044 or beyond, we have to say, this is what we're looking for. How do we achieve this? And how do we work together to get this? You know, obviously cost is a big factor, but we can look at certain costs and say, this is not necessarily an emergency or an urgency. Let's focus on an alternative route. This is where we'd rather put our money into. And if we're not looking at the underground cable for 25 years, what do we need to do right now that will achieve our goal for the future? So I think asking for communication and being a part of something instead of being told what to do, I think is a great first step.
Thank you. Dave?
No, I mean, I think this is great. I mean, really, we need to understand what they based this decision on that they're pushing or cramming down our throats, for lack of any better.
Yeah, I had hoped that there'd be a way to request, some states would treat utilities as public entities that might be subject to public records. I don't think that's true in Massachusetts, so I think, in effect, anything the town is custodian of, we have to first try to see what they have available, and then if there's more, then we may have to ask our legislators to have a chat or something like that. But other thoughts? So how about if anybody has immediate feedback on, I see some of you made notes on the public records, if there's it, I was trying to be very organized in laying out, but I wasn't trying to be abrasive, just kind of matter of fact. But I'm going to send that in tonight unless anybody tells me.
I would change comprehensive to master,
Okay.
because technically it is the master plan. You know,
Do
I
we
mean, that's a
need any
legal
kind of vote?
document, state
Okay.
41
Yeah.
D, 81D, right? Jeez.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Through you. Leslie, do we need any kind of vote of, I guess, confidence or to allow Judith to send this letter from the board? In
I'm sending
full
it from
body?
me personally.
Okay.
Unless, I thought that was less confrontational, to just have it be me. I haven't put my
Yeah.
planning board title on it. I just
Well,
as a resident, but.
I'm just wondering if you send it personally, if they'll give you the same response as you would as a member of the
Carry
board.
more, right, if the board signed on?
And that's why I'm asking
And
for,
the board spent all this time talking about it. I think you all should take a vote, but that's up to you.
If you like that, that's okay. But again, I'm trying to be consultative with you, but not put you in a
I don't mind
place you're
being
not ready
putting
to
in
go.
the position.
I think
I think,
I think it's trying to be inclusionary. I think
Carries more weight.
that's the drive
Okay.
here.
yeah.
No offense, you carry a lot.
Well,
Yeah, no.
But I think from the
Yeah,
whole board
I mean,
as a whole,
yeah,
I think.
I think
I think coming from a unified board would actually get a better response, and that's something that
Okay.
I'd like you to consider, and if so, I'd like to make that motion.
Yeah, I think the request is not to be confrontational. It carries the weight of the significance of the matter, is really what it boils down to. And then along the lines of the significance of the matter, the only thing I would suggest is paragraph 2, section 2, is to include, and the basis for costs.
yes, I made a note to do
And
that.
then that gets, so that if there's a comparative within our own community,
Right.
but if there's, what are those costs based upon if National Grid provided them? Because, I mean, the other thing is, just for our discussion and just for general public knowledge, is the request was first made to National Grid, but there's no satisfaction to be gained there because they don't have to provide it. So this is really our only alternative. It's not, we're coming after someone we're trying to get the information, and we're trying to, I think, telegraph the significance.
There's a place on the town forum that you can include an attachment, so maybe I'll attach what I wrote to National Grid in their response.
Sure, that sounds good.
So if John made a motion, is there a second? Oh,
Question
Linda.
first, since this is not a request to National Grid, knocking a little bit out of this topic. Have we made a sort of friendly request first instead of going sort of to the neutral option?
I was actually thinking the same thing.
Well,
It's a pretty big deal to do a public records request. And maybe
well,
we
How
can-
big is that? What does that mean?
maybe
Is that like
to my
50
mind.
people, 100 people have to like,
Well,
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna do
I
that.
just have to say, I'm used to people filing public records requests all the time. In my life, the student newspaper filed public requests. Anybody in the world, it's actually, I think it's April, the League of Women Voters all over the country have people put in test public records requests to be sure that governments are paying attention to public records. They do that nationally.
I'm just,
So I don't know whether it's commonly done here. The reason I want to do it is there's penalties if they don't comply or if they don't comply completely. And I also think it's kind of a stiff letter to write to say, here's 17 things, give me this, 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 and this. But they have a standard form for public records requests. So
Well, the only thing, if I may add, is in different municipalities, I think it can be perceived different ways. But the difference between an informal request, however friendly this request is that it's a formal request and it goes into a process. So it's like if someone comes to the planning board and asks for something and it's informal, it's really outside the proper public channels in a way. So I think that the way that it is delivered, both literally and figuratively, can affect the perception of what the intent is. And I think we want to be, we would like the information. We'd like the specific information. We're requesting it for the purpose. I think that's, might be a right-in add-on, but it doesn't, I think that I would suggest that the formal process is probably the way to go. I'm not suggesting it be perceived as confrontational, but it puts it on the books and then it goes through a process where otherwise, it's just, whose job is it to give us this information? It doesn't fit into the system of municipal government if it's not part of the process.
I agree with Stephen. It takes out the wiggle room and the schmooze and the salesmanship out of it and just gives us the facts. And that's all we want.
And this is a friendly request. If their perception, they conceive it as a hostile request, then I think that should send up a little red flag saying, why are they, perceiving as a hostile request? We're just asking to be informed and participate in the process. And I think by asking this formally through the planning board, procedure-wise, it's the right way to go.
the other possibility, I want to draft a letter to them that I may be able to do tonight and run by all of you for comments. But I
to
also
them, who's them?
to
National
the
Grid?
well, to National Grid, but also to the manager and the select board to just since I wrote that to National Grid and laid out kind of what our concerns were, it seems like that's appropriate to.
I mean, I think this letter is going to do that. Already.
Well, what I was going to say in that was
The napon in this letter.
is
Soften the blow.
to have two communications with an actual letter saying, to be clear, we've filed this request, but this is in connection with our effort to work more effectively and to get the information and whatever. So it's not just only the records request. And if you all think it'd be better to wait and do both of those.
Personally, I
at
would
the same-
suggest that, you're fully capable, and if we reviewed it after the fact, it's, submit the, capture the intent, as you see it, into letter form, so that there's basically
so
it's
it's
an
attached.
accompaniment.
Okay.
And then, I mean, that's me.
Okay.
I don't need to review it again.
Okay, if that's good, then Leslie.
I do have a concern about you drafting something and then circulating it for comment because you
I wouldn't
would
to-
be
to-
deliberating
I
outside of
wouldn't
the
to
public
them, I'd send
hearing.
it to you, and have you distribute it with comments back to you, but if that's, I understand.
That might be a little dicey, too.
Okay, well then, if you're agreeable, I'll write a letter.
I would just make a simple motion to allow Judith to send a public records request on behalf of the planning board.
And communicate.
And a follow-up
and a
letter.
follow-up letter.
And a follow-up letter.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do we vote on this or no? I wasn't sure of protocol, so I didn't.
No, it's just the.
No, just, I guess,
It's you guys, okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Any advice from anybody else?
Good luck.
I appreciate you're taking the weight of this. And the detail and the organizational aspects you put into the presentation through staff. It's important to have it, and it makes it easier for us to understand what's going on.
Okay, well, I appreciate your engagement around the issue. I think it's important. Okay, two more things. We have calendars. I think, Holly, thank you for this. We had a discussion at our quarterly organizational meeting about changing how we do A&Rs. And so
okay.
the suggestion was, I think, Steve, you had said, wasn't it the Friday after our regular meetings? Wasn't that the proposal? There's
Friday before,
The Friday before.
I thought.
Okay.
was-
I was, and the reason we've got this, wherever I put it, the dates is so that we can all,
Friday before our regular meeting.
The 9th.
Oh, right, so that if there was a
Yeah,
question.
and the key to this is, wait a minute.
right.
So
that
we
you
would take
dispose
our
of what you
regular
can.
schedule and just, okay, back a day. I got it. That's good. That's better.
regular, go back.
Yes, that's good.
Oh, just when you're looking at that, I know we're not going to talk about this until the organizational meeting, but that may actually be a place where if, in accordance with law, the planning board needs to vote on things that are minor.
That was already
some
discussed.
Things like that could be
Yeah,
picked up.
it's already discussed.
what I
Well,
was
I meant what
wondering,
we
yeah.
were talking about earlier.
Right, exactly.
Some of those Form Js and some of that other small
Right.
stuff
Yeah.
that's big for the applicants,
Makes
easy to
sense.
vote on. Yeah, yeah.
So, are we ready, do you think,
So you want to do the
to
9th?
launch this for the 9th of August?
Now, what would the times be?
yes.
This could be in the daytime, right?
It could be in the daytime, we'd have to post the meeting.
Right.
I think I wasn't at the organizational meeting because I was on vacation,
Okay.
but I think what you all discussed was at 12.
That was
On
one
Fridays.
proposal, but everybody's work schedule.
Well,
I
here's
think,
a good, this is an important thing. Friday's the day that when you live on Nantucket, you sort of sneak out on the
That's true.
3:30 fast boat or the
Exactly.
12:30 fast boat.
I haven't learned that yet.
You know,
Well,
you try to
It doesn't, sorry.
catch up on your drive wherever you're
Is
going.
it feasible to do it on Thursday? Do we get those far enough ahead that?
That we received them 2 weeks ahead of time. So I don't know where the Friday idea came from,
I
but you
think
could do it on
Thursday might be better.
Thursday, Wednesday,
Thursday.
Monday, and any day.
Mondays, I don't think are necessarily good just because they're with holidays and everything.
Oh,
You know
that's
how
true.
the Mondays are the one that you take off,
Yeah.
Yes.
that it
So-
can
If you can't
become
also
iffy.
take out Fridays
Yeah.
or.
Yeah.
And,
So-
I think Thursday at 12 is good.
and only 3 people are needed at any time, so
That's
if
the
one
other
of you
part.
signs up
Don't
and then
always
you
have to
decide to
show
go
up.
off island, you can
Perfect.
just swap out with someone.
I think
Yes,
I've said
that's
this,
good.
even though we're only looking for 3, it's obviously open to all members.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But if you're signed up, you're responsible to find your own alternate.
I like
Put it on
that.
Staff, right?
You can't.
keep it, you can't find.
And if you're an alternate, you
Well, I
find
didn't
an
mean
alternate.
alternate, but I mean, you're standing. If you can't make it, you got to do it.
Amen.
John and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
yeah.
try to be sure that one or the other of us is there each
Right,
time,
yeah.
so we can
Yeah,
do that.
communicate with each other, knowing somebody that's not going to be in. That's a good point. I think that's good.
And so,
Yep.
So why don't you all pick your dates and times and then turn your calendar back into us and we'll put up
But
a
it's
list.
only once a month.
Only
right?
once a month?
yeah,
Okay.
I think right now, if it's
well,
agreeable, I
we
would
only
just say, can everybody put on the 9th of
The eighth.
August?
Or are you doing the
Sorry,
eighth?
the 8th,
Thursday.
Thursday,
Yeah,
the
8th at
8th.
noon.
I do that all
At
the
noon,
time.
and then we can do a reminder right beforehand, but at least some of us can do it then. I mean,
I'm available.
And then it would look like
I'm just curious, are we gonna change application
Doing
deadlines
this
or
in the
no?
back of the plus?
Let's just leave it right now.
Let's leave
just
that, let's do them one at a
do one
time.
thing
So
at a time
let's
here.
start this.
So then the next one would be the 5th of September.
Correct.
And I'm only checking that because
Right.
of Labor Day.
So the suggestion I had, just to be clear, is that you all at this meeting would say who's going to be there on the
Yes.
very next meeting, so that you're not
That would
putting
be
it on
good.
staff to have to
Right,
coordinate.
that's what I'm trying to work my way towards, so if we can,
We're looking for 5th.
Sorry to
no, the, looking just at the 8th,
Just an organizational.
I
minded
just wanted
person.
to ask if everybody has their calendars, you can do
Yes.
it, I can do it. Do we have at least one
Yeah.
other person who can
I'm
do
good
it?
for September and August.
Okay. And I assume this is gonna be in the, 2 fairgrounds in one of the back rooms?
Yeah,
We'll plan for that in the conference room, and if the conference room is booked, we'll find another spot in the building.
September.
I don't know.
Can meet in our luxurious
fairgrounds.
garage area at a table, in the back room,
I didn't look.
in my
Tent
office,
outside.
wherever.
And we're going to do A&Rs and any Schedule Js that are escrow releases to start with. Pardon? Okay.
Yeah.
I think we don't want to yet move into trying to do secondary and
No.
tertiaries. I think we
Okay.
just want to
No,
start with the
I don't think we
A&Rs
should do that.
and
Okay.
the stuff that's really
Yeah.
clearly got no discretionary stuff till we see how it works,
Okay,
if that's okay.
yeah, so we'll do all the A&Rs and any previous plans that come in that are really
Or
straightforward.
revote things, stuff like
And if
that.
we put something on the agenda and you
Possibly.
don't want to do it until Monday, then we'll just carry it forward to the Monday agenda.
Right, and if, I think probably it's, the more of us that can come at least the first time to see how it works, that's probably a good idea. And
Yeah,
then
good.
maybe by September, October, we can.
And we can figure out Columbus
out-
Day possibly later.
Alright.
What would that be? It's
We
weird.
do it on the 10th,
10th.
the week before.
When's
But
Columbus Day? It's
if there's
Monday the
any
14th.
issue about
but we
the
have our meeting
timing,
on
I just want to be
Yeah.
sure we nail that now.
Yeah, you're okay.
But you'll have the stuff, so for the Thursday
so.
before the Monday meeting, you feel like your usual review process will allow you to have, put out an agenda for that, and,
I'll make this August work and we'll just go from there. I mean,
Okay.
if, you know, if we do need to move it up, and if it's just the A&Rs that, and the Form Js, that's just a matter of changing the deadline and just letting the surveyors know, as well as letting the attorney know. But-
yeah, I think that's right, just to, for starters, anyway, just to be sure we're good on it, and then there may be other things, as Stephen said, or we may be able to come to some understanding about what are the kinds of things that we can add to this protocol to move them along faster.
Okay, so we're good for the 8th?
We're good for the
Okay.
8th. And so we've got one other thing here, the Cliff Road enforcement issue.
So the issue here is the planning board approved a subdivision, which I think was converted to rear lot subdivision, but in any case, it was a subdivision of some sort. And you included a condition that limited construction to certain
Is this that
dates.
long driveway thing I
It's the
mentioned?
long driveway. So
Mentioned
they
that
were
by
doing,
accident
they
today.
were allegedly doing work after the deadline where they were supposed to stop. And I think it's been resolved. But in the
Yeah.
event that it hasn't been resolved, does the board want us to proceed with enforcement?
What was up with the neighbors there? That was all to do with
Yes.
a road from Timbuktu that somebody, they just did, and then
Well-
somebody didn't want to share, and
It-
they had all these little driveways.
That's the one out.
And then there was that piece of land, no, this
This
is
is
on
the
the
Barrett.
other
On the
side.
right side. And
This is
is
Barrett.
They
in
had a turn
between,
off.
and they don't have frontage from Oak Hollow Road.
No.
Even though the
No.
lot is right there.
Different, this one's different.
It's,
Yeah.
you
This
gotta
is-
come a mile away on a dirt road.
This is the former Barrett property.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
What's
And the
Oak
back-
Hollow?
back rear lot
Oh,
Oh,
subdivision.
Oak Hollow's not a road. That's an easement, but.
But my point is though,
Yeah.
Okay.
that was brought up at the meeting.
So this was a lot division that you all allowed on like a 1974 land court way.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of waivers granted, and part of that was limiting construction to certain time periods. So if you want us to proceed with enforcement if necessary, let us know.
Is it outside? Are they inside work now? I mean,
Holly talked to the person.
Well, right now, I'm not too sure, but as of about the 10th of June, 12th of June, around there, it was all open. It was literally like all open stud. There was no windows in, no nothing.
This
They were
is stick
doing
built
work.
house,
It's a stick
brand
built,
new,
yes.
okay.
Yes, they're working on, if you remember the two lots,
Yeah.
that back lot.
I do.
Developers have bought that one, and I think they're gonna purchase the other one. So there were concerns from one of the abutters who came to both those meetings for the AR,
guy at
the
150?
modification. I can't remember his
Yeah.
name at the right
John
time. But
John McGuinn.
there was one.
Yeah.
It wasn't him. It was another abutter, but he was
Oh,
really
okay.
close to the area. And those conditions got carried over into the rear lot special permit as well because of the concerns from the abutters. So.
And there was the road access had to stay on the first original lot, not through the rear lot buffering area also, I remember. So there's, noise, gravel, there was not allowed to be gravel in the road. So
Yep.
there were a lot of things that were considered, and I'm
But
just
the-
curious if
yeah.
everything's
But this condition was specifically on the construction.
just on
But
the
was the
construction.
Yes.
condition like summer? Like
No,
downtown?
it called out the year.
It had specific dates,
Yep.
and we're
Okay, so-
past the date where they were supposed to stop.
Yes.
And that other road is Hickory Meadow, not
Hickory
Oak
Meadow,
Hollow.
thank you. Yes.
What
I
is
was confused.
enforcement in this case? This
Oak
is one
Hollow's
of my
off
first
Hummock.
enforcement.
So
What
we're
would
still
you do?
operating under this really old policy of the planning board, where the planning board at the time said, we don't want staff to independently start some enforcement action,
Right.
which I think now is a little bit murky because we have plus and we're all functioning in the same office. And really, I can't think of a time where this is.
Yeah, but if it's a special permit type thing, I mean, that is sort of still our jurisdiction.
Well, it is.
Kind of.
So-
I mean, you
so
wouldn't
that's why
want
we're
somebody
asking.
Running out there doing something.
I think we have to like at least address it and,
Yeah.
and find out and not shut them down, but maybe issue a nice light-hearted warning to say if you continue this, there will be obviously enforcement consequences.
Right,
You
and-
have to at least alert them.
And I'm not sure if this all happened while I was away, but I think the zoning enforcement officer, zoning compliance coordinator, did go out there,
Yes.
but didn't witness anything at the time.
No,
Yeah.
he did.
Oh, he did?
He
Okay.
did know. He told me for 3 days after the
notice.
June 15th deadline they were
Okay.
continuing.
But it sounds like it's.
But
So
are they
he
supposed
wanted
to be
direction.
doing, like, quitting at 4, or is this off for the
Just
summer?
done.
Done.
Really?
Yes.
Do they know this? I mean, I don't mean, the new owners I'm talking about.
Should.
I believe they are aware of that because when
That's a big one.
when they were trying to get the building permits associated with that, I had to talk to Marcus and then I had to talk to the contractor because we also have a condition about getting the road access graded and whatnot. That was in there,
I
and there's
remember.
certain time frames and
Weren't
all
they
that.
supposed to keep
So
it,
they,
like, wet?
I know the new owners, the developers are well aware of these conditions.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
just on that follow-up in terms of enforcement,
Wow.
what is the actual penalty? Did I miss that?
If,
think there is.
so I think step one would be for the board to send a letter to the zoning
Like a notice.
compliance coordinator saying like, we want you to investigate this.
Right.
And then it's up to $300 per day, each day that it's witnessed. So, I mean, it's been a couple of weeks since we got the complaint. I think they've been put on notice. I don't think it's an issue now, but if it is,
I think
it's a
we need
while
to-
until the next
We
meeting.
need to be consistent if
Yeah.
we're going to impose these
I mean-
things. And
Right.
I
I'm
mean,
sure
that's a different, I mean, this was I don't want to say a bonus, but like Leslie just made me think about how this all happened. This was sort of this landlocked, sort of buildable land with already stuff on it, and all of a sudden, it's become like sort of similar to that kid that was just here.
Absolutely. That
Kind
was
of.
kind of the start of these rear lot subdivisions and paving.
And we wanted to they wanted to keep it the same. And didn't somebody buy one of the lots on Cliff Road and that road kind of touched their land and they wanted their own driveway?
Yeah, that was in front of
That was
the
a
other
good one.
150 or something
All right.
before that. Yeah.
I mean, if they agree to it and it's in a condition,
Yeah.
I mean, that was part of
So
the
I think we should
sale of the
find the
property.
status of it. If it's all 2 weeks ago and nobody's complaining, everything's right, great.
But I think we should still write a letter.
Yeah, I
to
think
them
one has to
regardless of whether
recognize the
everything's okay, and
infringement
let them know that
officially.
we know, and that if it happens again,
Well, and that would put them on notice for,
Starting
for
penalties. to
starting work again at the end of the summer. So it's like, okay, we're made aware that you were doing
And-
work
and what
after you
did
should
we
have
say
stopped, so
September
don't
15th, or
start
did we
again until you're
say, like,
supposed to.
Wednesday after Labor Day. Did we come
No,
up with the
we-
15th thing?
Put in exact dates.
Yes, I
Did
believe
we
it's
exactly-
September
So,
15th to
whatever those
June
are.
15th.
So the notice is a warning, and then there's enforcement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense.
September 15th.
Do you need anything from us, Leslie?
Do we need
Just
a
a vote
motion?
would be good.
Did that answer your
A
question?
motion?
I'll make a motion to send a letter to the proper owner or whatever it is, contractor,
Okay.
with the
Second,
conditions in the permits.
I'll second that.
John seconded.
Unfortunately.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Any opposed? Okay. Any other business, or else somebody want to move to adjourn?
I'd make a motion to adjourn, but I'm just an alternate.
Here we go. See?
I take that as a
good.
consensus that we decided to adjourn.